Hey, everyone. We are live. I am Damien, aka Sleepy Reader. This is the unnamed floating comics chat. And today, right next to me, over here, we've got the mighty LahRasa, the most famous unknown artist on YouTube. And
Forgotten to do that.
And below, we've got Matthew, the comic board, the king of meditation and a Zen comic book contemplation. And so we're going to just chat comics we read this week. So sometimes we talk about movies or films if we've seen anything. I've only seen like a quarter of or a third of Dune. I was hoping my daughter would want to watch more with me, but so far I probably have to watch the rest by myself. But I enjoyed a lot what I saw.
You watch it from home?
Yeah, on HBO Max.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got HBO Max as well, and I actually took Tuesday off this week from the retreat center and drove about a half hour. I did some comic shopping, but I went and saw Dune in the theaters. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's one of those that if you can, even if you watch it at home, you like it. If you can get to the theaters to see it, I highly recommend it. The soundtrack throughout the whole thing is just incredible. It's usually not something I focus on, but it really grabbed me throughout the whole movie. It was really good.
Yeah, have you had a chance to take a look at it, Rasa?
No, cinema is not something we can do.
Right.
It's what happens when you live with a husband, myself, and no family around us.
Yeah.
Because I live in England, my parents live in Lithuania, my husband's dad lives in South Africa, so there's lots of no for us. So, and cinema is not something you can, and especially like all this COVID stuff doesn't help to be a bit like, oh, maybe a friend. But there might be a change maybe from next week. Let's fingers crossed. I'm daring my mom to come and visit me because I'm really kind of mother worried about my own mother, but I just haven't seen her in 2 years and miss her. So
and she has her vaccines now. I know there was a
everything is for her. She's good. In that sense, I'm worried about her, but hopefully everything, because rules changes, and I bought her ticket and I was like, oh my god, do you actually want to do this? And I was kind of worried about that, but there's no way I can see any differences coming through anyway, so we have to take a chance. So she's willing, even though a 68-year-old woman, to drive her to just take to the airport. It's like, why are you doing this to me? But it's more difficult for me to go, so it's because I have a child and all that stuff, so I have an excuse. I'm trying to make that in my head as well, but fingers crossed I will see her. Maybe she will let me go to cinema with my husband. That would be like a first in like 4 years or something, like almost like two maybe 3 years actually. We haven't had a chance to get back anything, to be honest. Yeah, so hopefully
sorry, no, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'll finish.
I thought you were done, and I just
yeah.
I just gave architectural foam panels and columns a wrench because he wanted one.
Oh, nice.
Now we can put people in timeout if he thinks they're being bad boys. We have Scott Connor here. He agrees. The mighty LahRasa. Everything Comics. My buddy Bob, and a fantastic person, is here. Ragga Muffin. Hello. We love Ragga Muffin. We love architectural foam panels. Architectural Foam Panels has been putting out a series of like less than a minute long videos that I think are kind of brilliant. They're just fun goofs on YouTube, basically. Let's see. And Miss So, one of our favorite constant companions or frequent companions. Well, you got to be careful what you joke about, AFPC, because now you've got the responsibility. And Jack Yo, our old friend, he goes back all the way to the old days of YouTube. That's a funny thing. Speaking of old days of YouTube, I saw they currently have a first annual comic book YouTube Awards.
Really?
Which I think is the third time someone has done comic book YouTube Awards. But it just shows that most people on YouTube are new. And so to them, it's just ancient history and no one remembers. I remember Cat Comic Book Uno hosted a comic book awards at one point, and I think someone else did too. Oh, and we've got Tacky, who has a great channel. I highly recommend checking out his channel. 1984 says everyone has a wrench. Maybe I should get. Oh, sorry, 1904, not 1984. Whoops, what did I just do? I'm gonna give you a wrench because you're a good guy.
You're like Oprah out there.
Give you a wrench. Give you a wrench. The other nice thing about Dune is that now me and my daughter at bedtime are reading Dune.
Oh, cool.
Oh wow!
I've got this. I think it's a British paperback from the 70s.
Yes, that looks like
the U.S.
those-
paperbacks had a very different look.
lots of editions of Dune came out, and there's some of them really. There's one YouTuber. She used to, comic book girl named Teen. She's very famous. She used to be working for Marvel, and she stopped. She's kind of like in all sorts of it, and she's like a Dune aficionado, and she's doing these videos about like convincing people to read, and she has this magic thing, and like people who likes magic stuff and stuff like that. So she's very into that Dune stuff. But yeah, I have not seen it yet, and I'm very curious, and I've seen lots of people getting excited about. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm really kind of thinking home or cinema. I'm kind of still debating that. I'm still
not. I feel like I don't know what I'm going to get if I go to the cinema. Whether it'll be crowded or how the people there will be behaving.
Yeah.
So I think, excuse me, despite your recommendation, I would like to see it on the big screen, but I think I'm just going to stick with the home screen for now.
Yeah, it's one of those where if you get the urge, like a 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, that would be a good time to go. I don't know, and I don't know how they're done at your theaters, but on my theaters, everything's online. You can see like who's got reserved seats, so you can see how many people are going to be at the theater with you.
Oh, right, reserved seats. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think is it like a 2.5 hour long movie?
2.5. Yeah. It goes really quick though. I was enraptured like the whole time. And like I said, the soundtrack, the special effects, the sound was just great. That's what made me think that it's definitely worth a watch in the theaters if you can get to it, just for having that sound system. It just added a lot to the overall movie.
Right. Well, and when you're in a theater, you focus your attention in a way that at home
you don't have distractions. Like you can pause it, and then you can go to have a tea, and then you're like, oh, wait, why we paused it? Why we don't concentrate? And you have a conversation between each other, like, oh my god.
Then you pick up your phone and
and then you're just like, why I'm watching Instagram at the moment while I'm watching the movie or something like that. Yeah, it's cinema is like you realize, oh yeah, I spend money, I better concentrate.
Big hello to for the love of comics. Everyone's one of everyone's favorite channels, I believe. And I don't know if I've called out everyone who's joined. Celia from Norway.
Nice, good to see you.
Ragga Muffin, I think I might have already mentioned. Big hello to 1904 Comics. He and I generally pick up the same comics. I know he has great taste. And I can tell just from the third that I watched, Bob, that it is by far the best. It was just amazing at the beginning how cleverly they catch you up to speed on all the information of that Dune universe of Frank Herbert's, which is a really hard thing, I think, for a film or even for most writers in books to put the information across.
I think I remember, Damien, seeing, and you might remember when the first one came out, 1984, I think it was.
Yeah, 83, 84, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I was 9 or 10, and my uncle was big into sci-fi and took me to see it. And I remember like going in, and I think they gave you a sheet of paper with a history of Dune. Like before you could start the movie, you had to read like some information. And at like 9 or 10, I'm like, I am totally lost. And I just sat there so confused. And this one was the opposite. Like they dive you in, but everything gets explained.
Yeah. Of course, it's hard for me to tell because I've read the book 5 times during my life.
Oh, wow.
But it was the first big book I read as a kid. I think I was 11 or 12. And I was thinking back then, because we're reading it out loud at bedtime, but we actually have several books we're reading out loud at bedtime. And back when I was a kid, there weren't that many books I could get a hold of. So when I got a hold of Dune out of the library, my focus was only on that for a few weeks. In my free time.
And have you read the whole series, like all the Dune books that he's put out?
I have, but the last 2 I've only read once.
Okay.
Out of the 6. I feel like the first 4 are really great, and I've read them multiple times. But maybe I should go back and try the last 2. But I feel like the last 2 kind of were unnecessary or too far removed from the initial story.
When you get tired of reading yourself, maybe just put audiobook. It can talk to you. It's like, I need a rest a little bit.
I really enjoy reading at bedtime with my daughter, so
I bet. I'm talking bullshit.
But yeah, audiobooks are great, especially for like a long trip or something. Let's see. Did you call Maud Dibs? I don't think anyone else was interested in my small town library at the time. They had a science fiction section that was just like one shelf this long at the very bottom of all the other shelves. Because it's such a small town. The library was in an old garage.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, do you want to be first, Rasa, to dive in on something to tell us about something you've read?
Put me on the spot straight away. Thank you very much.
Well, Matthew's still in a kind of guest.
Yeah, you have to
position, so
treat him with otherwise we scare him out
and
away.
the host always gets to go last.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone figured out a way to weasel myself back into the second show. It was like kind of cool.
I don't know. Oh yeah, let's go with this. Something kind of like I would probably never pick it up, but I decided because one of the library picks. So Kinderland, Childhood in East Berlin.
I haven't heard of it.
So this is by Marvel. It's a something. Curiously, the art style what drew me into it's very cutesy. It's very childlike art style. There's not much of like kind of like elaborate paneling, but it's absolutely fantastic to describe how he is describing the time of his youth in East Berlin before the wall has dropped basically in Germany. So and then surprisingly enough, so we're following this kid and then just sleepy, we have to, so bone alert. He just woke up and it's like, come on, go down, kind of like he's having a conversation with his own thing, and mom comes into the room. So you know, you boys, you probably know exactly what his boy's going through. I was just having a laugh because every single time I was like, oh my god, yeah, it's just like, you know, you just, since we're having this conversation in the Abyss chats, I just can't stop. It's like,
well, I'm glad there's something for Terrence to watch when he time.
So basically we're following this little kid. He is living in East Berlin, of course, and is basically concentrating on his childhood while this thing is happening. And surprisingly enough, it's actually kind of I went back because I'm originally from Lithuania, so my life being part of Soviet Union I wasn't really kind of like, when you know you live that kind of life, you kind of know, you just think about yourself, but you don't think about other people who has to live the same kind of living. So East Berlin had to go through the same, and even the building, the buses even feels the same as it was when my childhood was going on. So because when you're living in part of the Soviet Union, everything kind of almost has to be the same. Nothing can be different. So your salaries should be the same. Nobody should be different apart of, you know, people in charge and stuff like that. So this boy is growing up, and of course he has the turmoils because bullies and stuff like that. So he meets this guy, and this is an era where the pioneers was, of course, he was a pioneer, and he meets this kid who is that kind of like new way of thinking, but forbidden way of thinking. He wasn't a pioneer and everything. And then the classes and teachers, how they were teaching, how you make sure everybody is supposed to be, you know, listening to what you've been told, and always like that. So what it was, it just felt very much like my childhood in a way, of course not, you know, like a girl from girl's perspective, but just really felt like I was going back in the high school, which is not my favorite part, to be honest. But I was growing up in that time when my country as well was about to finish being part of Soviet Union as well. So it's kind of, as I say, that's what I felt really kind of more into the story even furthermore,
Mhm.
because the life this boy was leading and was showing us. It's a very endearing story. It's superbly done, and it's the characters are really easy to read. And honestly, I couldn't stop reading. It's because I was getting it so much, I guess, going through that stuff. And there's this ping pong tournament they had. And I remember that clearly in my school, where when you have a pinball, you could not get those paddles because, of course, they were very expensive in that time. And here is the same thing. So every single kid, whoever had it, they were like, "Oh my God, how did you manage to get hold of it? You're the richest person in the world just by having a paddle." So it's you can tell how life used to be like that, like you couldn't like get hold of it because somewhere from different country, like one of them had it from like China, and how you got hold of something from China, like stuff like that. So it's like impossible reach in those times when you were in that age. So yeah, I remember that as well. We were absolutely fascinated by that kind of thing. So I don't know, it's just like a book I would never look at, but I looked at this cover, and then I was curious to see how much you will cover the Berlin part. It really didn't touch that much, but it was really involved at the end of the storyline, because there was a couple of things what happened here. Like the parents were thinking to leave East Berlin to go to the West Berlin, and that's like no, because you can get arrested, you can even get killed. And he heard his parents talking about it, and the schoolgirl before that, she was basically talking about, her parents was talking about the same, and then she disappeared from the school, and everybody was wondering what happened. And most likely they were or killed, or they were taken away to somewhere you don't want to be taken. So he got petrified of that. And anyway, so the story ended up really well. The wall collapsed in the storyline. Also, he basically managed to be famous in the school because he was one of the guys bullied, but because of his skills of ping pong, he was almost like famous, and everybody was listening to him. So very endearing storyline, and it even tells you this is the original writer. So that's his pitch in here as well. So Marvel was born in East Berlin, 1976.
Is it a single volume story?
Yeah, single one story. It's absolutely fantastic to read if you wanted to know how was life in being part of the Soviet Union. This is a great way to understand how life was like from the child's perspective. Of course, it's not going to be anything more crazy.
It's nice to have it from the child's perspective, and we should all know more about that era's kind of become invisible to us. We just sort of want to forget the Soviet Union sometimes. Yeah,
and then my sister used to be wearing that, like the pioneers and that arm like this. I wasn't already, but my sister had to do it. I remember I was jealous. Oh yeah, she's 4 years older than me. I was actually jealous because she had this red scarf I wanted to wear, but then because I was a child, I didn't understand why she had to wear it. But for me, it was like, why can't I have it? And my dad was like looking at me like, be thankful for not wearing that shit. So so you had to wear this, you had to sing this before you start the school. You had to sing this the song you had to sing about Lenin, I think. I don't remember, to be honest. As I say, I hadn't had to do it. So, but yeah, I had the reminiscing. Like, honestly, it felt very similarly to what I had to experience. Especially like the one thing always stuck in my head is going for ice cream at 5 o'clock in the morning just to queue. Because if you don't wake up as early, you might not find the ice cream you wanted so much. So I remember that very clearly. And then queue for 2 hours until you hoping there's enough ice cream for you until those 2 hours passes. So
sometimes you just didn't get ice cream at all after
waiting. Yeah, simple things like oranges, pineapples, they were like extreme treasures. So Christmas gifting, like you think Christmas now, kids are all about gadgets and stuff. For us, it used to be fruit from warm countries or nuts, to be honest. That was my Christmas present most of the time, to be honest. And I was a very happy kid until times were passing by, so. Yeah.
You're so spoiled now.
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, honestly, now my child is absolutely spoiled by anything I like. Oh, you just hiccup in one direction, I already buy him something. It's like, why are you doing this? But different era, different time. But I highly recommend to read this. It's kind of very different feel to whatever kind of like you read or whatever I read, I guess. But it's really endearing, and the characters are fantastic, and the era is just, it's just really beautiful to read and so quick to read as well. So it won't take you, even though it looks quite thick and stuff like that, but it's absolutely fantastic. One of the best things. I've picked it up from library by not hearing anything about it.
Was that like a British edition or a US edition?
No, I think that's European edition, Reproduct. I think it's even German publisher, to be honest, but I'm not sure because it belongs to library and they have stickers where most important information. Oh yeah, it says, no, it says it was printed in Riga, which is interesting, which is Baltic country, one of the Baltic countries, actually one of my neighbors. But yeah, it's and also another thing which I forgot, it has this pages at the back, which is actually, it's like a periodical table of all the characters. So you'll introduce to all characters, but also it'll give you a history lesson in the way of him to tell you what happened. So he was part of here, so east, the like part of the Germany, and the west were modernized. Everything they had, like lived through all the Beatles, like music they were talking about, like LPs you can get a hold of, you can't get hold of these days in that time. My mom's, for that music were like from friend in order to listen to something new and fantastic or something like that. But yeah, so it's a really interesting way. Like he'll talk to you about how the tanks came, how Russia took over and stuff like that. So yeah, so it was interesting how they made this deal, and the way he's drawn the art, I think is really cool because it doesn't make it a chore, you know, like history not for everybody, to be honest. Nobody, too much of the history, nobody likes it, but this way it's really nice to just, you get reminded yourself how things happened and how significant part was that, how people from the same country wasn't able to see each other. For example, if you have family in one side or another one, you will never meet each other after that. So it's kind of harsh decisions and stuff like that. So yeah,
very, very tough times that you were lucky to be young enough to mostly escape.
Yeah, I was born at a time, still like too young to experience most of it. So when I was 9 years old, things changed in my country. I remember actually tanks, which is the first time I saw tanks crossing my streets, coming into the going towards capital, and my dad left to capital to protect it. And we had 1991 when we got our independence from Russia. A lot of people went to the capital to protect it from the Soviet Union, and then lots of death happening. So we never knew, because television was cut, so information was cut. Nobody wanted to find out what they're doing. Basically, we're trying to prevent that. But people were fighting, and they were able to basically persevere. But still, after almost how many years, I'm not going to say because I feel very old now. We still having that to live through, because it's really difficult to get away from what it was. A lot of generation had to pass through the way the life of, you know, like the way you lived. It's difficult to forget that in some ways. So
were your parents born under Soviet rule?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the whole life they knew before. Before it fell. Yeah.
But my grandmother, or my mom's mom, especially from my mom's side, my dad doesn't talk about that. It's a sore subject. But my mom spoke that her mom was extremely not allowed to speak Lithuanian when my mom was growing up, but she was. But if you would be heard speaking the language, you would be put in Siberia, basically, straight away. There was no excuses. They did not find that amusing. But we still managed to keep the language. People are fighting. The people like my grandma, for example, these people who were not afraid to die just for what they believed on. So a lot of people were fighting for simple things like books in my language weren't existing. My mom was taught from her mum. And then from people's lips through to lips, you found the book and you had to hide it. Otherwise, if it be found, you die, basically, or you shot in front of everybody else. Wow. So, yeah, not pretty.
Interesting to do a comic book or book about the generations of women in your family, maybe.
Yeah, I was,
take us through those different stages of time.
I would love to, but taking family history from my parents is not easy.
Right.
My mom is very
that it's hard to get her to talk.
Yeah, my dad's mainly like my family's history. I really don't know much because of the lots of things happen. My dad doesn't want even to talk about the days in the army when he had to be as part of Soviet Union. So he was in Siberia. And part of his duty in an army, so he knew the cold.
He saw what was going on there.
Yeah, he almost said they almost thought that he's going to lose all his limbs, to be honest, because of the freeze. And you'd stand there for like 12 hours, and it depends what shift you get. If you get night shift, you should pray.
Wow.
So they were drinking.
That's why the Soviets brought the Lithuanians in to take those shifts, probably.
Oh yeah. Like lots of it happened. So my son might appear.
Oh, that
would hopefully won't do that. By the way, yeah. So it's an interesting part of the life my mom had to and my grandmother had to be part of. But it's lots of people try to forget, and then you shouldn't be forgotten though. I think that's what the problem we have in these days. With the new generations, we don't like. Simple things like Hitler. It's like, oh my God, fascinations on that. I'm not talking about Gorbachev or Lenin or Stalin. That's another story. Those were as well crazy, obsessed people with the power. And they were like Gorbachev even today. I mean, just me thinking about it, I wasn't aware of him, but I still know the feelings my mom and my dad had towards that person. So it must have been really difficult. And I know it was because of what he was dealing with. So, and Putin is another one. It's another tick in the book for them. Like really great person to have as a leader.
How are we going to get back into a shallow comic book mindset?
Yeah, sorry. I
no, it's not your fault. I was encouraging you. I find it fascinating.
I'm a history major, so I loved it. I think that book's right up my alley. That one went on my list because
I'm gonna have to look for it too.
Yeah, when you get the graphic novel and then somebody who lived through some of that time period and can say, yeah, this is kind of authentic to what I experienced. To me, that's gold. That's great stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a lot of history just gets erased.
Yeah.
A lot of different people's experiences get erased.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because my grandparents, for example, life they led in that time. Because my grand, if she would have been alive, she would be 95. So there's lots of things she would have seen before that. So all World Wars she saw through. She lived through that as well. So there are stories she was telling my mom, but my mom, she's like, I know all the snippets because she's like of the age. So. Sometimes you can't take all the stories from her. It's like, write down in the book, for God's sake, woman, come on, work your ass off. I need to know all of the things about my history, something like that. She looks at you like, what you want? Don't bother. Anyway, so it's fascinating.
I remember doing a paper in college for between East and West with the wall, and it was all about how they got around it. And I remember reading one guy's report of how he took his car and he cut off the top of the roof and turned it into a convertible that was low enough. And so he could drive to the checkpoint and he had a lever on his seat that would allow his seat to go all the way back so he could fit underneath the thing that stopped him. Wow. And that's how he just took off then through the checkpoint to get over to the other side. And the tunnels that were dug from one burnt out side of east or the west to the east. And it was a fascinating period.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It would be nice if we had Earl Grey in the conversation now after reading this, because I guess I'm not even know which part of he was from. So it would be interesting to see which were because the different perspective from people is from one side to another one is very different. They different way of life completely, because in the Western part you're free, you're open, you do whatever you want to do these days, for example. And in the Eastern part you just have to be checking yourself every. You don't want to make moves. Like my dad used to tell to me about buying a car. You had to get permissions. Like you get permissions to buy a gun. So they check your psyche, they check your family history. We used to be all sorts of things just to buy a vehicle. So, so or you had to know somebody of somebody of somebody who can basically wink towards the right person to get your car. So this is the way we used to live.
That's unimaginable compared to the way we live.
Yeah, or go to supermarkets and you see a shelf of nothing. So you see counters, there's just a label saying to you, this is a meat. Would you like to buy it? Maybe. Give me like a fare to buy the meat for you. Like, so you have to bribe the person who's working in the supermarket to actually see first of all meat. Maybe afterwards you will be able to buy it. That's kind of conditions that we used to live. Well, my parents used to live. I was like kind of like a person of perspective, just looking through the life like that. So this is used to be the right in Soviet. Like that's how we were living in Soviet Union. I'll never forget that kind of stuff. It's kind of interesting, but yeah, it's remarkable now when you go supermarkets and you have shelves covered and people were petrified when they were COVID kids and they were panic buying. That doesn't happen in Soviet Union. If something happened like that, you don't forget about it. Like just, I bet it would have been like that. I'm just presuming now, but knowing how it used to be. So anyway, yeah, fascinating.
Well, and I mean, I don't know what we can do about it, but I mean, North Korea is like that, all those other countries, but maybe even worse. And
yeah,
we all just sort of sit around and accept it. I don't know. I know every once in a while we try to do something with North Korea, but
there's a lot of we should do something about it, but we forget in front of us what's happening sometimes.
Yeah.
But, we live our lives. We don't have time. We have only like one life. Somebody told me the other day. It's like, wow, okay, cool. Anyway, let's talk about comics.
You mesmerized Ragga Muffin. Big hello to Dr. Von Chilla, another older YouTube guy that we love.
Yeah, hello.
So yeah, we have to get back to comics eventually.
Yeah, I could talk about it for a long while about all this stuff. I'd be like, what I know. I don't think so.
So Matthew, if you have anything you want to just chat about,
yeah, I got to try to follow that up.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I didn't think it will escalate to that kind of part. Yeah,
I'm a white male from the Midwest who grew up in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, actually, I think I'll start with an issue that I talked about with Highland G, and AFPC actually recognized this issue, and I fell in love with it. So at one point, I'm going back to the Daredevil and the Epic Collection one. John Romita Jr. got married during this, and so they took a break, and they mentioned that Ditko comes in and pencils this article, and they had Anne write just a one shot right in the middle, because they're in the middle of this Inferno storyline, and they kind of talk about this, and it was cool because AFPC said he really he remembered this issue and it stood out. So there's this group of wacky kind of hooligans, the bombers, and you can see him kind of lighting a firecracker or something that's attached to his helmet here. So it's a really, really goofy group. The kid's sticking his tongue out and just acting weird. And it turns out they're part of the Owl clan. And they just keep giving the Owl like crap, like left and right. Whereas down here, they're talking about like, this guy's just a hoot. And, look at him with his old hairdo and his old outfit. And what are those silly claws you're wearing? And so basically, and then he dives out of the plane at one point, and they kind of like are amazed by him. Like, oh my God, he's maybe a little bit more important than we thought he was, or a little bit more skilled. Meanwhile, there's a bum who finds a baby in the trash can.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and decides he's going to adopt the baby. And so, this long story short, the Owl plan is to rob the drug kingpins in New York City, and they do these deliveries through these sacks here. And so he gets somebody to recreate a sack that has like little bombs on the bottom that are paper thin, and then he's going to steal the cocaine and replace them with these bags with bombs in there with sugar or powder or something in there, so it'll end up exploding in their face. And of course, at one point, the bum sees a free bag, and so he takes it and he ends up putting the baby in it. And so the idea is that the baby's in one with the bomb, and that's when Daredevil shows up. It's just this really wacky then story with this baby sitting in this bag and doesn't have the bomb in it or doesn't, and the bum like going all upset and berserk over, he's actually like in tears. He wants this baby, this bum does. And it was such a wacky issue. Here's a little picture of I like the high tech, that bomb in the bag there. And then obviously the owl comes in and he ends up fighting Daredevil. There's the very ending though. But at the end, it's so funny because the bum's crying because he thinks the baby blew up. Some of the bags blow up, and then Daredevil ends up bringing him back to him, and Daredevil ends up giving him back to the bum instead of taking him to like the police or anything. I think at one point he even says, I should probably, basically, take this baby to the authorities or whatever. But he said instead, I'm going to give it back to the bum, and he ends up giving it back to the bum. It just stood out. It was so wacky and corny. And one of the other things I really dug about this one was I really like the inking on Daredevil on this one because it was so different. The inking's a lot more kind of defined there. It's a lot darker. It almost looks like he's got partial black. And I'll show some of the other stuff. So they split inking duties on this one. Where's the one? I mean, even in these ones, he's really looks like it's part of his black outfit.
Yeah.
The
way they drew them early on, I guess.
Yeah, and this was inked by Manley and Williamson. And all the other parts of the book are from Williamson. Yeah. Right. And it's a lot more it's a lot more scratchy.
Oh.
Where it's not quite as filled in. Like you'll notice like along the lines, there's a lot more pencil marks instead of just big solid filled in blocks. And there's a lot less shading, a lot less inking on it, and just a lot more color. And that really just kind of stood out to me as I was reading through it of how much more I enjoyed that darkness to it.
So maybe that was the Manley inking.
That's what I'm thinking, because it's completely, it's just so far different from, I'm standing here and there's nothing else like that in the book in the earlier or later pages when it's just Williamson doing it.
But it's also a different penciler, so that makes it a little trickier.
Yeah. But it was just a really fun, these bomber guys are just, they're kind of your corny. The owl's getting all upset. It was just a really fun, like one shot. And this is one that if I ever find in a bin somewhere, I'm picking it up because it's something I can see pulling out and reading again and again.
Kind of a unique item.
Yeah. And it took place right in the middle of this infernal storyline that they were going through because of Romita Jr. getting married. So, yeah.
I guess somewhere on YouTube, Nocenti talks about that issue a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Ditko would stop by her office to philosophize because she was the only one that would tolerate it. If only they knew now what we know now. Knew then what we know now. They would talk to Ditko more.
Yeah, I got to take a look for that interview because I think I'd be curious to hear what she's got to say about it because it's just one of those that
he says an interview with Claremont, huh?
Interesting. Yeah, it's the one shot in the whole book. The rest of it, the storyline kind of continues. Although maybe I'll talk a little bit later on about the Inferno storyline because that was really good. But I'm guessing it was an event that took place because it never fully wraps up. Daredevil's got a big part in it, and all this stuff is happening, and then he ends up for a whole issue. He sits in a bar, so maybe I'll show that one when we come around again. He's drinking in a bar for the whole time, which is pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you definitely make me want to find that issue too.
Yeah.
If you come across it, I definitely think it's worth picking up. Especially the Ditko artwork is good. Yeah.
Can you tell us the number of that issue, just in case people will know as well?
Yeah, definitely. That one is 264. It's from March. I guess this was, I can't remember when she started her run. It was after Miller, so was it the late 80s?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got the baby. It's got the baby on the cover. 88, 89 of March. So yeah, number 264. Yeah.
Cool. Oh,
if anybody sees it, even like the artwork here, where he's got the bongo drums, and I like it's like his hands are attached to him the way he's hitting them. Just some really good artwork in it.
Get listed as a co-plotter or anything like that?
Nope.
Sometimes they're funny in the way they do this saying who's doing what we're doing that time and
Right.
era still as well. Like the plotter is that one, that's the done this one, that had an idea.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right, because sometimes they would sit around and chat with the artist before they, wrote up a synopsis, so the artist had some kind of involvement, and sometimes they didn't.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to ever know who did what.
Yeah.
Of course, the one person that is noted on there is it's Stan Lee Presents. So
Of course, he's
Oh,
always.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. It always presents everybody.
I've seen something where someone asked Stan Lee about the vision, and he said, "Well, I didn't create the vision. I don't know anything about him." And I'm like, "Dude, your name was all over it. You were the editor and publisher, but you don't remember." Well, big salute to the Gray Man. I don't know if everyone follows the Gray Man, but he's been doing these incredible recreations of short horror comic strips from the Bronze Age, mostly. I think he did 30 of them leading up to Halloween, and I really love those.
Just to on Daredevil subject before you start.
Yeah.
I got this.
Oh, nice.
So those Marvel Legend Daredevils, and I was like, I couldn't pass it by. They have all sorts of figures, but he looks the best. Like, so it's very old school figure, just completely all red and stuff like that. But anyway, just to show you, really like it. I'm
Are you
debating.
going to take it out of the package?
That's what I'm debating, but I think the package itself is really nicely done as well. So I kind of like wanted to keep it. Even gives you a bit of a
You need
backstory.
to buy one for your son and one for yourself.
Yeah, well, if my son gets hold of this is coming out from that package for sure.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Take it out of the package.
You can't save him, or you can't save it for sure. Yeah.
I didn't know about any Ditko Daredevil, so this is very interesting information.
Yeah, this is interesting. I like that comment.
Oh yeah, so Ditko, it was a Ditko plot. They just didn't put it in the credits.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's
That
completely.
explains the crazy stuff with a bum finding a baby. I mean, that just Ditko's mind just goes off in crazy ways.
And I should have assumed that, because as you're reading through like what happened with this, where Kingpin sends Typhoid Mary after Daredevil, and he basically beat the crap out of him, and he's trying to get in between him and Karen Page. It's all serious stuff, and then you come across this episode with the bum and the baby and these drugs. It's just so off the wall that it makes sense that it's just a Ditko plot in there. But it's great. It's great stuck right in the middle of this, because it's a lot of heavy, not heavy reading, but it's a lot of just emotional stuff. And then you get this really fun issue.
Well, it's great because we're all going to run out and try to find those issues now.
No, definitely looking already, because I know I don't have them. So it's missing in my other Daredevil collection for sure. So.
Chris, Chaos and Comics, says it's easy to find that one. So maybe if you just type into YouTube Ditko Nocenti or something, you'll find it.
Okay.
Okay, I will talk about one of the more interesting books I read this week called Friday, which is by Ed Brubaker and Marcos Martin, I think is the way you pronounce his name. It just, us Americans would say Martin. And his wife, who's the colorist, very hard name to say, Munsta Vincente. So this originally appeared on the Panel Syndicate website.
Yeah, I read the first issue.
Oh, you did? Okay. It was started by not by Brubaker, by Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin, and they published a number of comics there, some of which I think have come out in physical copies and some haven't. And for some reason, this is smaller than a normal comic. And I don't know why.
Oh, wow. That's tiny.
Yeah. And I think that's... I really enjoyed reading this, but at the same time, I kept having quibbles with it. I think it's a sort of a young adult story, or it plays on the idea of being a young adult story. They do throw out the F-bomb and the S-bomb here and there. Maybe that's now allowable in young adult fiction or young adult comics, but they do publish young adult comics in this smaller size, so that might be one reason.
So is it all wrapped up, the whole story in one?
No, it's really just the first chapter. I mean, they say 3 chapters, but it's really just the opening salvo of whatever's going on. So let me switch to my little overhead camera thing.
I remember one thing about that one, that the Friday character, I was fascinated by her from the first issue going forward. So
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's really neat about it. The Friday character, she is kind of described in the back matter as being kind of the Watson to this what's his name? Something Lancelot. Lancelot.
Yeah.
Her first name is Friday. His first name's Lancelot. I can't remember their last names.
It's not Lancelot Link, the talking chimp, is it?
No, not quite.
Does anybody remember that?
So he's kind of a cross between Sherlock Holmes and Encyclopedia Brown.
Oh, wow.
And she is both his Watson, but also his bodyguard. She is like a super athletic girl. And they meet one day when she saves him from some bullies by thwacking the bullies with a hockey puck.
Wow.
And it's kind of complicated. So I'm trying to think of a quick way to describe it, but basically she's gone off to college and she's back for her first Christmas vacation from college. So it also captures that feeling of when you first go away from home and then come back, and that weird feeling you have about, you get used to that as you get older and you keep coming back to visit home. But that weird feeling of the first time you visit home after going away. I definitely remember having that when I went off to college and then came back. The art is in a different style than I'm used to from Martin. And it took me quite a long while to realize he's trying to inject some Edward Gorey into his style. Are you guys familiar with Edward Gorey?
No, doesn't sound familiar, but I can't place it. I don't know.
Americans would know his artwork from the intro cartoons in the old PBS mystery show. But I wish I had some of my Edward Gorey books around. He draws these very quirky, slightly gothic mock children's books. Like often they'll be in the they'll be in the form of an ABC book, but B might be the bat who hung upside down dripping with my blood or something like that. I'm just making up. That's not really what it would be, but things like that. So he's channeling the art style of Edward Gorey to an extent. So she comes back and there's a new mystery, and it's clearly going to be a kind of Cthulhu-esque mystery. So this takes place in a unnamed small New England town in the 1970s for some reason. And there's a mystery going on, and there's people muttering things about the white lady and that kind of stuff. And then in the background, before she went off to college, because I guess he stayed in the town, she kind of declared her love to him. And then they had a makeout session where they discovered they had no physical chemistry whatsoever.
That's the worst part.
And have never talked about it since.
That's the most awkward thing you can experience.
So I think what the thing that bothered me about it is, which is often my complaint, is the coloring. And I'm not sure what it would have looked like digitally. And maybe it's supposed to go with this, dark New England Cthulhu kind of feel. But there were times, plenty of the coloring is okay, but there are times when it was like here, I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I think it would have been fine on a digital screen. The other thing is, it's kind of a Europeanized New England. And so this is me being super picky, but I grew up in the 70s in a small New England town, as we mentioned, with the library that was in a garage. I mean, it didn't remind me much of where I grew up, but there could be towns in New England that are more like this. I'm trying to find a picture with all the curvy streets and stuff. I guess there are some houses like this in small New England towns, but usually they have a more colonial look to them than this, with a big porch and I don't know, and white clapboards everywhere. But it's a really cool setup. I hope more volumes come out soon, because I want to know what happened next. pretty badly. And Brubaker has this real talent of picking those interesting moments in life, like I was talking about the comeback time of coming back from home the first time after leaving home, and the first awkward relationship where you've spent years hoping it would happen, and then it happens and it's not very good. And then, well, I don't want to spoil the end of this book, and I'm not sure if I'm right about who died or not. Another interesting motif were these beautifully drawn owls.
Yeah.
Actually, when I look on my video screen, I can see the owls better than I can on the paper here. They get little lost in the coloring there. Anyway, it's a really cool book. I wonder if later, when it's all done, they'll come out with a larger size hardback, which might be something to wait for. And the other thing that I was kind of picky about, I don't know why, was the actual narration was done in this past tense style that sounded like maybe a documentary film or something. If this were a history kind of story, he wouldn't be up in the lighthouse with his dad. No, he'd have his nose buried in a book right now, researching. Oh no, that's not actually bad. So that's not the ones that bother me. Anyway, it's a really cool comic, and also just kind of a unique idea to play off all those kids series books. I'm sure other people have done it in certain ways, but like I love this page here where it shows, it never says they're stars of books, but it shows all these books of their different adventures. And this might have been where it started clicking with me that it was kind of Edward Gorey-esque. And then I read the description in the back that Ed Brubaker wrote of the town of Kings Hill, in an unnamed part of New England, looking part of America. It's a port town, a fishing village on the coast with lots of fog and old buildings. On one side of town, oh no, that's not. The town has a Lovecraft meets Gorey feel. So anyone who hasn't checked out Edward Gorey, you should look for that name. It's a lot of fun. So yeah. So have both of you said you read it in Panel Syndicate or just Rasa?
I did it. I was very curious to see, because I'm a fan of Brubaker's anyway, but I wanted just to, Panel Syndicate was done before, and then I wanted just to, because I don't know, it's just maybe the art drew me in. But the thing is, they weren't consistent when it came out. I think that's why I dropped it off completely after just reading one issue, because I remember I was waiting one time, but like you get distracted by other things, and then they came out again with another issue. But I remember clearly I really enjoyed the way it looked on digital. I mean, it doesn't look very different, to be honest, in what I've through the screen. I mean, maybe I would see that some more differences if I had it in my hands. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I actually, as I say, with the character of Friday I like strong females, so she was right up my alley there. So she wasn't afraid of fighting boys to protect the other boys. To be honest, like I was growing up like that, so I was the one fighting boys always. Like there were some times when my dad's like, "You can't win. You have to stay away. You really no, you can't." I was like almost like fist fighting. Like, no, you can't. He's too big for you. Too much testosterone. I mean, he's way too much for you. It was like kind of so she reminded me of that in a sense. So. Yeah, but yeah, as I say, I would be curious to read how it went from the beginning again, because the feel of the first issue I was very excited about, because like the way Brubaker has a mystery part, the way he solves the mysteries is really endearing to me, kind of in the way. So he's a fan of mystery, but yeah, it's
this book, this volume is just setting up the beginning of the mystery. I mean, it's still very mysterious what's going on. Yeah, it could wrap up in another volume. I don't know. But I'm tempted to try and read the rest on Panel Syndicate as it comes out to get the story quicker or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked what AFPC said, though. I kind of agree. I like the coloring, at least. I don't know. You said it looked a little different when you were showing it on your screen. The stuff that I saw, I actually like the the chapter 2 where they showed the town with the house. That looked, I thought, really. I like the artwork and the color in that. And there were some early
This one?
pages.
Yeah.
There were some earlier pages in the woods where like you could see like the moonlight was casting a shadow. And that looked really interesting to me. And then the snow ones.
Yes, the snow ones I loved as well.
I don't know. Yeah, it looks better on my computer screen.
Does it? Yeah.
But I'm pickier than most people, I guess. For me, on the page anyway, these dark kind of panels, everything kind of just looks like a blur, or like this one here. But I don't know. Different strokes for different folks. It was a small complaint, really, because I enjoyed reading it.
Did you have to buy them, the issues on the Panel Syndicate?
Panel Syndicate is a pay what you want to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's right.
So to get it, you have to pay something, but you could write in 0.
Yeah.
What I always thought was weird, because I tried it a little bit when it first started way back when. And I was always thinking I would like to pay after I read it. You know, if I loved it, I'll give you $10. If it was just okay, I'll give you $2 or something like that. But I guess you could go back and buy it again after you read it for free.
It would be very difficult to actually entice somebody to pay afterwards. It's like, okay, I'll pay you maybe next week. Do you know what I mean? There's people like that who always takes advantage. Yeah, I find that's why I'm kind of interested with the Panel Syndicate stuff, because, you know, like, you have a couple of pages to look at, I think, before you commit. As far as I remember, I think so. Yeah. I think you can. So, but I think you'll kind of like they give information prior to that, because newsletter from Matt Brubeck I always follow, because, you know, whatever he's coming up with. So he came up with that information for me first. Yeah. But he admitted himself that he had a couple of delays and stuff like that. So
I think in the end of the day, whatever they do, if it comes out physically, I'm going to buy it physically. Like I bought the Private Eye. That was the first thing they did. It was called Private Eye. It took place in a future where the internet had been canceled. Yeah. And I ended up buying that in that big edition.
Yeah, it was like all like slimmer and then it was longer, isn't it?
Right, because I guess they weren't thinking about phones and iPads then. They were thinking about people's computer screens when they started. So they designed it for a computer screen.
Yeah, and then you flip it on your phone, you miss like slightly off the page, and you like had to scroll a little bit more, and then that kind of like people. For me, it was like, you know, you can pick on stuff, but that's part of the way design it was, and stuff like that. But anyway, but they came out in print as well. Like this one came out before, and I'm like, but I kind of like. I mean, I always like to try digital first, like maybe first issue, and see if I like it. But then you commit to the rest of the story. If I like it, go to paper, because I just like paper.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited.
And somehow a book that's kind of metafictional, you know, these are like characters from a kid's book. It's just nicer to read it in a book form in a way.
Yeah, but it's so sad that it's so tiny, because that it looks like art could be really happy to be in a bigger format because of those mood settings, you know, like when you have a bigger page, the mood setting is it's portrayed easier for your eye to see what you wanted to
like all these panels, it would be nice bigger.
So
I don't know what they're thinking is if they're trying to aim this at the young adult market. It might be something an older teen might like, who remembers reading these kinds of books as a kid. Oh, well, anyway, really kind of fascinating and different. Someone was asking what it was called. They probably saw by now, Friday, which is just the name of the first name of the character. So, Rasa, back around to you.
Yeah. Just before I start talking about something else, I'm very glad to announce that Ice Cream Man actually going to have hardcover. So I'm whip.
Are they really?
Yes.
Oh,
so
wow,
they're coming out with a hardcover. Yes. And they're going to do it in next summer. So watch out next summer. You're going to have it. We're going to call it Sunday, like Ice Cream Sunday edition. So it's going to be all nice and blue color. I think the artist in Twitter is showing the first cover. He's actually doing it as well. So I was like, when I saw that, I couldn't believe it. But then I saw the artist names. Like, okay, so that's from the source. So surely it's actually coming out. So yeah, I'm very looking forward to it. It collects first 12 issues. So I'm definitely
nice.
going to be on the watch.
So I assume that'll be oversized.
Yes, it is. And he announced that it was oversized, which is absolutely fantastic because I think his art,
awesome.
it will be more freaky to read.
I will totally double dip on that one.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that I persevered and I never went for the trade, which is, like just me being a snob.
It was hard, right? Waiting that long.
Very. I was like already thinking, to be honest, before it was like, the last conversation we had, it was like, oh my God, maybe just go do it anyway, but it didn't.
Well,
anyway.
That's where I find they're talking digital in the chat, and that's where I find digital so well. Like, I don't want to buy the trade because I'm waiting for it. So I've read a couple of trades of Ice Cream Man, but then I just stopped and I was like, well, I'm going to wait and see if they collect it. But I could get them from somebody had mentioned Hoopla. It's just a library app where you can borrow them digitally every month. So many borrows. So I did that for it. And there's a number of series that, that's where digital for me comes in really well, where you can just try something out and see if you're going to like it. And then I normally stop and go, come on, hardcover, please put one of those out.
Yeah. I often, if I like something on Hoopla, I'll add it to my mental list of things to buy.
Yeah.
And as Chaos and Comics says, Hoopla's resolution isn't as good as the resolution on like Comixology or something.
Oh, I see.
So if you, expand a single panel on Hoopla, it might look a little fuzzy compared to the same panel on Comixology.
Yeah.
Oh,
but it's a great way to, I mean, we like to read so many comics, right? It's a great way to read some other stuff, and especially if you want to shotgun a whole bunch of stories at once. I find Hoopla digital kind of slides through my brain quickly and easily. Oh, Celia's, I know, has been buying them all in paperback. I wonder if she'll be tempted to double dip.
You wonder? I bet you she does.
Yeah, so I'm very excited. I was like, I can't believe I've managed to persevere, and they actually somebody actually announced that. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's like deja, like you feel like you're dreaming kind of thing, kind of in a way, weirdly. So I'm going to talk about Hellboy. So I picked up this one of the new stories. So Mike Mignola, Chris Robertson, Christopher Mitten, Ben Steinbeck, and there's lots of creators, Michelle Madsen on colors. So one of the Hellboy stories where it passes me by and I wasn't really as excited. And there's one thing with Hellboy sometimes I have. I mean, the stories prior, the beginning of the Hellboys, I'm a fan. I have been collecting them. I like to buy hardcovers now, but I couldn't resist it. I wanted kind of the same back feeling of the Hellboy, but this one just, I don't know. It's one of those comic books where it wasn't enough for me of being a Hellboy, what I really like. I guess having a Matt Mignola and Chris Robertson, who is creators in this one. And it seems to be there was some story maybe before to that. But anyway, this is a Silver Lantern Club. So there is going back with Hellboy and his dad, or adopted dad, going in 1953 in London, England. They go into this pub and they're having this conversation with one of the dudes about something like this mysterious Silver Lantern Club. And this guy who was part of the club was telling the stories, how things happened, and they were very surprised, and they're having a pint of drink. And then this guy is telling you stories. And what would really happen is that art changed straight away. And I really used to having a Hellboy with one artist and one story, rather than having in the middle of it to change the artist. And that's what's maybe a little bit of a drawback. But then you have the story of telling of another monster who was trying to be captured, but he went into this megaphone, I think that's what it's called, to transmit. But basically, he invaded it, and nobody knew it. And then the people, the Mr. Grey and his assistant, they were trying to find out because they weren't successful to capturing this demon. And then somehow in this conversation, they find out this is the right demon they were looking for and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just the demon was captured. They found out how it was, but it just, the story didn't capture me enough to be kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I should just go Hellboy in collected editions. So this is a little bit a different thing, you know. Like sometimes I like having Hellboy in single issues, but it's just sometimes with single issues is not enough. And I think Hellboy in generally reads better in trades or in hardcovers, whatever your fancy
Yeah, I
is.
agree.
But this one is just, you know, like I want more, and they're like, oh, continue the story. The way it ended this issue, he had more stories to tell, so they're gonna have another drink, and he's gonna tell you another tale, and it's just like, okay, kind of. I just know I hate saying that because I really enjoy the Hellboy itself and his lore and everything, but it's just something is missing. It was missing that because he wasn't maybe part of it as well. He was just sitting in the pub and then like having a drink. And the guy who was telling us a story, he was telling his life before that, how he was doing and what it was. So that's why it's just like having Hellboy, just a name in there, but not being really part of the story one. That's what really bothered me most, I think. So, you know, when I get comic book, especially when it's titled Hellboy, I want Hellboy to be part of the action, not him just listening in the conversation in the pub. So that bothered me quite a bit. So, but I'm definitely, I mean, I probably would get it in collected editions because Dark Horse does really well in collected editions. But as a single issue, just really passed me by, and I lost interest straight away almost. So that, I mean, I wanted to mention it, I guess, because, you know, at the end of the day, Hellboy was like, they stopped it, they finished the storylines, and they like back again with the Hellboys, and it's kind of like maybe it's a little bit of hiccup, maybe we're trying to find the rhythm of that. But I think if you want to continue with the Hellboys, involve Hellboy in it, that's why people are really getting it them all. So at the end of the day, I think he is the attraction point. Not somebody who's in the pub having a stories, which is fine in generally, but as I say, I just, in that time, in that moment, I found it not very amusing, especially when you buy a comic book called Hellboy. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I've started finding a bunch of recent Mignola series books at Dark Horse, just hard to get into. Like, they just don't give you enough information in a given issue.
Yeah.
I don't know. To ground me in the story or something.
I think they're really reliant on that kind of part. It seems to be lately that they rely on the name of the Hellboy itself to produce the books and entice people to come in to pick them up. But as I say, this is another thing which I already made a decision before that I'm not getting in single issues Hellboy anymore, because I'll show you. I like this, what I'm trying to collect, so hardcover or collected editions, because I really enjoy, especially the size of the books and all that stuff. And they're really doing a great job. And if you're a fan of Hellboy, I think those collected editions are really spot on for you to have them in the shelves. But always, you know, like as a fan, you want to try something new and you want to see where they are at. So at the moment, maybe I just picked up maybe the wrong story, I guess. They're coming out with another one, I know, as far as I saw, but yeah, it's just, you can't have, as I say, I'm unlucky maybe because I picked up a book which is Hellboy mentioned, but not Hellboy involved. So, you know, in that sense, I learned my lesson. I guess I should learn a little bit. I should watch what I'm buying before that. So it happens.
I think Ragga Muffin is trying to say is Hellboy overexposed? Has he run his course?
Kinda. In a way, but it's the way the end of the Hellboy was. I actually picked up that issue, those 12 last issues, Hellboy in Hell. Yeah. So kind of rounded up, but it was the end. It seems to be. We felt like Hellboy will never come back anymore, but I guess not. You know, like all comic book heroes don't really bye, and then hello, I'm here again. I found a new lease of life, like they say. You know, like. But
Miss So still loves Hellboy, but is sick of Batman.
I think the Hellboys have that folklore, which really helps them to tell the storylines as well. But I say, don't pick it up. Yeah, I don't know. You guys can pick it up whatever you want, but I wouldn't pick this one. Wouldn't recommend it.
I would say in general, I'm not sick of Hellboy or Mignola's stuff. All his different, like he has the whole Baltimore universe now that's expanded. But I am tired of the way they publish it, where you can't tell, like when I picked up some of those Baltimore verse stories.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell what this picked up from where.
Mhm.
Like, you're not explaining enough to me. So I have to wait till there's a big trade where you've put them all together that I need to read. So I just don't like the way they're publishing them anymore.
Yeah. It's
I assume that Terrence is in the middle of a birthday party or some other family event.
Yeah.
But you can always jump on if you want to.
It's like, hello, bye.
And Ragga Muffin will give you lots of money, I think. That's what we got going on here. If you jump.
Be careful, Terrence.
Well, Matthew, do you have something else up your sleeve?
Yeah,
Or
I
on
had
your
a couple
desk?
more. So I went to, I said I went into town, which is half hour, 40 minutes away, and then stopped by their comic shop. It's a small town.
Were you
So I
going
went
dollar bin hunting? I remember you mentioning that.
I was looking after talking with you guys last week, I got all geeked up about going and digging through some dollar bins. Well, they didn't even have any dollar bins at this comic store. That's how small it was. But they had 50-cent bins. They had two 50-cent long boxes. So there wasn't anything super amazing in there, but I did grab a couple things. So one of them I grabbed a reprint just because I've never read any of EC Comics stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And so this is from volume 1, number 2 of the crime story. So I'm like, you know what, for 50
That's
cents.
not bad for 50 cents.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a go. And it was a lot of fun. It starts out and the guy's kind of pleading for his life out in the middle of a field. And it turns out he's kind of a heist man. He kind of goes through and talks about how he gets into being a heist, how people want to work real hard in life, but he was never that way. And how he rips off his first grocery store. And then he comes across this millionaire who's got amnesia. And he's like, well, that guy looks just like me. And this is one of the things that, like, since talking with you guys, I've started to pay attention more to like panels that I like for whatever reason, and then kind of look at like, what do I like? What am I really liking about it? Instead of just going through the story. And there's just small stuff. Like I dig the way that he drew the shirt lines and how he used different wisps for the inking.
Yeah.
To create the and then the shadows, like where the collar is on them, and just some of the stuff he did around the head. So I started to pay more attention to a lot of the inking and the lines that they're doing.
I like that panel next to it where the guy's looking at the headline.
Oh, this one? Yeah.
That's kind of cool the way he's done the face.
Yeah, the shading there. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he gets the bright idea to, I'm going to go stake out this guy where this guy is. And he ends up hopping the wall at this sanatorium and catching him in there. And he's like, well, I think I could pose as that guy. And so he ends up, there's this other really cool panel too. I like he's got the clock like around his face there.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
great.
Yeah, I really like the work they did there. So he ends up going in and taking chloroform and basically killing the guy and then hauling him off and burying him on the grounds.
Jesus.
Which is interesting because he's like, nowadays I think of, you'd have that all dug already and whatnot, the hole, but he's out there digging. And so then he takes a spot and he's laying back in bed here when the nurse comes in. He's like, I fooled her, she believes I'm so-and-so. And he had read up a little bit about this guy. And so he knows enough to take over. Well, his wife comes and picks him up and then they get home and she's got another lover there. And there was a fake marriage basically. And the guy who was killed knew about it. He didn't, obviously, since it was a fake marriage.
Yeah.
So he goes into work and he's going to collect his money from all of his friends, his business partners, and they're all upset with him because it turns out that this guy who he killed was a heistman who was basically like Enron. He'd been taking everybody's money for investments and then pocketing it and spending it. And then he walks out of there and some of the guys that he had ripped off find him, take him hostage, and then obviously end up taking him to the grave. And him begging for his life about how, I'm not who I say I was. And, you got to believe me. You got to believe me. And so it was fun. That was, it was, I don't know, 8 pages total. Yeah, 4 pages. So double-sided 8. So that was the first one. So I read just a couple of them. I'll do the next one was about a doctor. Which
they're
again,
pretty dense reads, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They, I got about, I think there's 4 stories in here and I got through the first 2 and was like, kind of had my fill with it, which was great. But kind of about a doctor who starts to lose his mind and decides to leave town. And he doesn't know what's going on. He's the best surgeon that there is. He ends up just ditching out on his girlfriend or his fiance. He's afraid that he's going to hurt her. He ends up killing this guy's dog. Like he has these blackout moments. He's looking down the wall. He's, oh, that dizzy, groggy feeling. It's coming over me again. Everything going black. And then he comes through, and there's a little boy crying, and there's a dead dog here.
Oh
and
my
it turns
God.
out he had killed the guy's dog somehow. Yeah, and so he ends up going and hiding out, and he goes home, and then they call him back at one point, and of course it's the this person needs an operation, and you're the only man who can do it, so he's got to come in because he's the only one that can do it. And it turns out that it was his girlfriend or his fiance was trying to protect the whole time. So these horror ones have been a lot of fun, and then he ends up running out of the building and ends up killing himself at the end, diving off of the 15th floor or whatever, because he doesn't want to hurt anybody else.
Yeah. And
then there's these full page kind of stories where it's just a story, no comic. And this was even really good about a businessman who's going to kill himself, and his partner comes in and it's not going to allow him to do it. The guy's already written his suicide note, and the partner says, well, if I take him out right now, he's already got the suicide note written. It'll look like he killed himself. And so he takes the guy out, kills him, licks the envelope, seals it, and puts it in the guy's hands. And at the end, you find out that the way the guy was going to kill himself was by having poison on the glue of the envelope. So when the guy who was trying to pull the heist basically licks the envelope, he collects the poison and ends up killing himself, and both the partners end up dead in this business. So yeah, that's, but I'm really digging kind of the silly artwork in here, and just some of the good stuff. I didn't get in any further to it, but I'm going to actually go through. I like the panel. And like I said, for 50 cents for a reprint, I had never read any of these before. So I actually really enjoyed it.
I never read the text pieces before. My hat's off to you for doing that, because I just always skip right over them and assume they're not good.
That was a fun story. And one of the things I liked about it was you've got this, like I said, it was 8 pages basically. And they're telling these stories that, as you mentioned, Damien, they're pretty dense as far as what the story is.
Yeah.
But they can tell a whole pretty good story in this short period of time. They don't need to do this huge amount of world building. You don't need to have 6-issue arcs of character development, and you're still getting a pretty fun story to go with it. So yeah.
You know what's crazy about the EC Comics? I don't know if they always did this, but I read that they sent the artist the comic book boards with the lettering and the panels already drawn. And so the artist had to fit in whatever was supposed to be in each panel in a panel that was already set up for them.
Oh, wow.
And that sort of partially explains the kind of uniformity of layouts of a lot of them, because it was Gaines, the publisher, William Gaines, the guy who eventually became famous for publishing Mad. You used to see pictures of him with his big bushy beard and stuff.
Yep.
And his editor, Harvey Kurtzman, I think it was Harvey Kurtzman, or maybe it was Feldstein. I can't remember who, but the two of them would come up with plots, and then the editor would go create the dialogue, I think, and put them and get them lettered on a board and send it to the artist.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, what the
crazy way to work.
Yeah. Constructed drawing. Yeah.
One of the most famous stories, the one about, I always forget the title of it, but the one about the Holocaust survivor meeting a Nazi guard in the subway in New York. The artist for that actually cut out the board and spread it out over 8 pages instead of 6 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So he was willing to bend the rules, I guess, and then his story became super famous.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, these were, like I said, I was pretty shocked because I think they've collected these in hardcover now, if I remember right. I know they've got collected editions.
There's a whole bunch of hardcovers.
And good luck finding that.
I think Dark Horse did them, and maybe Fantagraphics has done some black and white versions. Yeah. And before that, another publisher whose name escapes me, who isn't currently a publisher.
LahRasa, you're saying they're hard to find?
Some of them, yeah, especially the famous, the earlier ones, the more famous ones. I think it's always difficult to get hold of anything.
Some are still available, like on in-stock trades and stuff, because I think Dark Horse is still releasing new ones.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I got some of my favorites are the science fiction ones. Weird Science and Weird Fantasy, I think, are their names. So I have hardbacks of those somewhere.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take a look at them, but I'm not I'm not opposed. Like I said, if I find 50-cent box and I find
Yeah.
these reprints, I don't care if it's a reprint or not. I'm still getting the story.
Yeah.
It's still got the coloring that feels
Well,
like
the
it's
original would
old
cost
school.
you hundreds, if not thousands.
Yes, yes, yes. And then I'd have to come out of my retirement and actually have to start working again. But it actually has that feel, like the colors
Right.
are all. They
It's
feel
on
like it's old
newsprint
school.
and everything.
Yeah,
So you get that old feel.
Yeah.
And they're such dense stories. You don't need a hardcover full of them to
Yeah.
read it. It's just nice to have them on your shelf. But yeah, they read well in individual issues.
I have like, if I could have found one, I always pick those reprints. It's beautiful. Some of them, like, if you can have comic or hardcover, I would usually go comic first if I could do that. But of course, original ones you can't get hold of them. So reprints is the way to go with VC comic books, especially. So.
Yeah, I think Scott's right. Gemstone was the name of one of the other reprinters of them, and probably did some of the hardbacks I have. Well, moving along, I kind of obsess about individual artists. I get on a bee in my bonnet about J.H. Williams. So I've been, because I've been getting the Echolands. This is Echolands 3. And I already did kind of the comparison of issue 1 and this is issue 2 in the black and white version. And I don't have it right here with me, but I just bought the absolute edition of Sandman Overture. That has the color and then the black and white version in the same giant absolute volume. Earl Grey showed it to us, so that's how I knew it existed, and I ran out and bought it. But I also on Hulu, because it's a great resource, as we were saying. Let me do screen share. I just sort of searched on J.H. Williams' name, and one of the things I found was that he did a Jonah Hex story, which kind of shocked me.
What?
And
that's cool.
So it's the pre-New 52 Jonah Hex run that was done by Palmiotti and Gray. And I guess at some points they just had all these different kind of star artists come and do it. So there's a whole volume that each issue is done by a different artist.
That one's brutal with his cheek missing instead of just his mouth kind of stitched.
Yeah, when you get it in real detail. So the problem on here is the double page spreads on the Hulu on the computer screen aren't any good. But anyway, you'll still get a sense of what it's like. So it's not nearly as detailed as Echolands. I mean, Echolands, I think, is his ultimate at the moment statement of what he can do. But still, it's an incredibly drawn story. Yeah. So there's one of the double page spreads that you don't really get such a good version of. Although it's not as bad on my iPad where I originally read it. You also get, because he changes styles a lot. It's interesting to see him just stick with one sort of drawing style and inking style throughout here. But basically, it's a story of Jonah Hex coming in and helping the sheriff kill some bad guys who seem to have a Gatling gun. And he's doing it because there's a bounty. So he wants his bounty. So it's really excitingly drawn, the big gunfight. Oh, there down here, this little mouse. There's an example of how J.H. Williams often switches styles. So there's a little bit of that in here. And maybe actually this middle panel here that's surrounded in black, that's kind of a different inking style a little bit. It's a little bit more like Mike Mignola inking there.
Yes.
And it also, the wonderful thing is it's also colored by what's his name? Dave Stewart. I mean, who is, in many cases the best colorist around. And he is a wonderful colorist with J.H. Williams. So I loved just finding this, and I read it a couple times or looked over the art a couple of times. And but then the story is really wacko because after this really exciting fight scene, he says, "Okay, Sheriff, I want my bounty." And the sheriff says, "Well, I can't give it to you right now. I can give it to you tomorrow morning. But you're so wonderful and you helped us so much. Why don't you come over to my house for dinner?" And he invites him over to his house. Let me see if I can find the page. He introduces him to the sheriff. For some reason, has a very pretty young wife.
Yeah.
I love this picture here. We see Jonah Hex wiping that gap. In his side of his teeth.
Food just left.
So J.H. Williams is really thinking about, the physical reality there. He would have food leaking out the side there. So we get a bunch of conversation. And then later, the sheriff takes him out onto the porch and says, we can't have children. There's something, wrong with my guys or whatever. And you are such a brilliant hero. We want you to sleep with my wife.
What?
And give us a baby. And you can leave tomorrow with your bounty and no one will ever know it's not my child. And obviously his wife is really good looking and all of that.
Yeah.
But he totally refuses. So here the art is changing again. I forget. Oh, they drug him. They drug him so that he'll be forced to have sex with the guy's wife. Totally wacko. But it's a great excuse for awesome artwork by James.
Yeah, the coloring is great with that.
But he fights off the drug and beats them up and says, screw you. I just want my money in the morning.
Look at that top panel. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I guess he's spitting up the poison there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's another, it's a new angle on the toughest nails Jonah story. It's just so beautiful to look at this artwork.
Oh, that's the second to the bottom panel. Looks like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Yeah, the Jonah Hex here is a little more Clint Eastwood-like, I guess, than in some versions.
That was beautiful.
But so he wanted to not pay Jonah, and he's got all these people with guns, but then he realizes that even outnumbered, they can't beat Jonah. So he gives him the money and he rides away.
Nice.
And the last panel, he says, yeah, you're gutless. I kind of hoped you'd take the shot. So it's hard as nails, Jonah, in a cruel and merciless world. But so bizarre that they drug him to try to, get a sperm sample, I guess. And then in that last panel there, you get a completely different art style too.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
There's little flashes of that. But I'm gonna have to look for a physical version of this issue for sure.
Yeah.
It says volume 6.
Does it say what volume? It is?
Yeah, on your pad, like a
address bar.
Tab, on the tab above. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It says Jonah Hex volume 6.
Okay, well then that's what it is. Jonah Hex volume 6. Is there comic details there?
There
Yeah, Jonah Hex volume 6. Bullets don't lie. But I'd like the individual issue. But there's also Darwin Cook in here if we have time.
What?
Oh really?
Later.
Yeah.
Or shall I just show it right now?
Yeah, you can. You can. I want to see Darwin Cook.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find the page. That's the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. The only Hex stuff I've run is the original or the old school 70s omnibus one. So I've always wanted to, hoping that they'll collect all these in some kind of hardcover format omnibus, and just waiting for them to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's popular enough.
Yeah.
They do have a hardcover omnibus of the Bronze Age Jonah Hex.
That's the one I got, the one from the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I've got and I've read and I enjoyed, but I was holding out for some kind of good physical copy with this.
That looks like cool art there. There's the Darwin Cook. So that's his cover.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see Darwin Cook is really good at nature. Like just this whole thing takes place in the snowy wilds of Canada.
But then Darwin Cook is from animation, so he has to be good at everything.
Right.
Because
and is Darwin Cook originally from Canada too?
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Maybe.
not sure.
Now I'm doubting.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure.
But his minimal style really captures, unfortunately I can't the way the web version works, you can't really zoom in on panels a whole lot. But I just love his landscape scenes here.
Yeah.
And so we got a father and son out trapping, and the son is mute, and the father gets caught in a trap and
chops his foot off.
Right. Eventually dies. And Jonah Hex saves them from the wolves, but the father dies, and Jonah Hex has to take care of the boy. it's
Wow.
kind of again a weird story. They run into the Mounties. I guess the early Mounties were not really very nice people, according to this story. And the Mounties decide to kill Jonah because he's a not supposed to be in Canada, I guess, or a wanted man there or something. They decide to kill him by just dunking him in ice water.
Well, that's enough. If it's freezing weather, you can just freeze.
And then the Mounties just leave the boy by himself there.
What the hell?
And then Jonah manages to get out of the water. He finds a stick underwater, I guess, and breaks his way through, or a log, and breaks his way through the ice and claws his way up. And the boy helps him a little bit. They have the dog sled comes, and they go, and Jonah goes and kills all the Mounties.
Of course he does.
And it's all beautifully drawn. Sorry, I'm going by so quickly. But this is a really brutal story because in the end, Jonah rejects the boy. I'm not sure why. I wasn't sure. Like, did the boy somehow give him away to the Mounties? I don't think so. The boy wants Jonah to take him with him, and Jonah doesn't. So the boy is just left alone in the fort with all the dead Mounties, and that's the end of the story.
Whoa. That's crazy, especially a mute kid.
But I guess the boy survives because I just realized this. I'd forgotten the story is narrated by the boy. So anyway, that was, also want to find this issue, because I like to collect Darwin Cook issues.
Yeah.
But the Palmiotti crew, at least back then, Palmiotti and his co-writer,
Great.
I guess they're just thinking of what new way can we make Jonah Hex totally brutal. And it doesn't seem like there's a continuing story or Jonah is anything but just tough as nails killer.
That looks fantastic as well.
Was Gaspar Noé one of the people? I don't know. I miss when I'm talking. I miss all the comments. Yeah, Bernie Krigstein was the artist I was talking about at EC that did the thing where he reshaped the pages, and that's considered one of the most influential comic book stories of all time, art-wise.
Oh, that's cool.
So anyway, yeah, that was really exciting, and again, that's handy with Hoopla. I just typed in the name W.H. Hayden and saw what, not W.H. Hayden, J.H. Williams, and saw what come up.
So you're a bit obsessed with W.H.
Yes, I'm pretty obsessed by it.
Because those Echolands, you just sparkle with that expression.
Right. I'm going to buy every one of the black and white Echolands, and then I'll probably buy the hardcover.
Did you read the Batwoman part? I think you did collect them, didn't you?
I read his New 52 Batwoman.
Yeah.
And I read parts of his original Batwoman before New 52 with Ragga.
Yeah.
I read that out of the library at the time, so I need to collect those too.
Yeah. Those are beautiful as well, because the panels he's working one of the stunning things of the DC time in that era, because he was working part of it. So.
Yeah, I especially like it when I can get something black and white to go with it. Somehow I'm fascinated by that.
You can see you can double, triple dip.
Yes.
If you're gonna come with hardcover, you're gonna go in black and white and the color one.
If they put them in 2 different volumes, I'll be stuck doing it.
Are you still,
Like,
Damien? Are you still buying auction pages every once in a while?
Art pages?
Yeah.
I've taken a pause on that.
I just haven't seen any videos lately from you with. I just love those.
Well,
videos.
actually, I bought quite a few and have not made videos about them. I kind of went crazy during COVID, and I'm a little embarrassed by how much I bought. And the prices keep going up.
Yeah.
So the stuff I bought pre-COVID is now like worth twice or 3 times what I bought it for, if those prices are maintained over time, which is a big question mark. But there was. I'm really embarrassed by this one. So recently, I don't know if they changed the app or I just discovered the aspect of the app where you could go to what they do is for like 10 days or 20 days, they have bidding online, and then they have a live auction in the last like after the online stuff closes, there's
Mhm.
still one last chance to bid on pieces.
Oh.
Wow.
And
So you can
never do that. Never do that unless you really know what you want to spend. But I was watching one about Jack Kirby, and I get this urge to win.
Of
When
course
it's live and you're seeing the number go up and up and up, and there was this little button said half bid, so they have some kind of increments that you can automatically bid in, but you can also once an auction do a half bid. And I clicked half bid, just so that's interesting, half bid, and I didn't think I'd win, and I won, and it was many thousands of dollars above the amount I had set for myself as a limit.
Did you pay?
I just wasn't thinking. I was like, "Oh, I could win," but I did win. So I'm staying away for quite a while. As we've said before, before we went on live, my retirement is based on the stock market, and that has done very well. So it's not a financial hardship, but I just have my personal. I'm not I'm not investing purposefully in comic book art. Although I do suspect that I or my heirs will be able to sell it for more than I bought it for. And this Jack Kirby piece, maybe I will eventually show it. I still feel kind of horrible about it.
Do you actually enjoy the page? Do you own?
Oh yeah. But actually,
Okay.
it's the one page I can't enjoy as much because I already own 2 Jack Kirby pages, which I paid a small fraction for. Because this one was a Fantastic Four page. So anyway, and I haven't bought any artist editions lately, but I might go back to that. There was one that I saw was coming up. I can't remember who it was now. That was
It's fractionally cheaper.
Oh, those are way cheaper. One of those is cheaper than your normal page of artwork. Right, they're about $150.
You probably can buy 10 of them with that fraction of one art page. You can buy 10 artist editions, isn't it? Probably.
Hopefully that Kirby piece I can sell like in 10 years for 3 times as much, but we'll see. We'll see if the art market remains strong.
If you can afford it and you enjoy the piece, it's Fantastic Four, it's Kirby. Enjoy it. It's good.
Well, to get really deep in the weeds, I consider above a certain amount, like I can spoil myself to a certain amount. Beyond that, if I have a lot of extra money from the stock market, I consider that eventually to go to charity, not to, buying pieces of paper. But I will eventually sell that Fantastic Four piece and give that to charity probably. Unless my fortunes completely change. But yeah. So that's more than I normally talk about on air.
Spill the beans.
But I
Spill the beans.
do. If you ever are bidding on art, what I normally had always done is I just bid on the slower paced internet bidding, and then if I lost it in that last minute live bidding, so be it. I just put in as much as I thought I was willing to spend, and left it there. Yeah. But that fast paced thing where you're just seeing it go up and up and people are bidding, it's a bad thing for me. I should never go to live auctions. I did a similar thing. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Comics with Bueller, and he did a big auction because he's selling his house and he's going to bought a van and he's going to go on the road, and he sold his comic book collection. And I lost several bids on his show that I really wanted to win. So then I bid really high on one just because I wanted to win it. And again, I did not spend more money than I could afford, but I spent more money than I thought the comic was worth. Just because I wanted to win. So I'm staying away from live auctions. Well, shall we do one more go round?
Oh yeah, I have more.
How are you feeling, Rasa? Not too late?
No, for me, I can go a couple more rounds if it's fine. I'm enjoying having it. It's been a while, so when it's a break of the week, I kind of I have quite a few.
I don't know if I got to say hi to Miss So, but
you
always
did.
good to see her, and we'll see you another time. And Ragga Muffin said this is a deep stream. I think Kirby is pretty safe. Yeah. So in terms of an investment, I don't feel too bad about it, but I just feel bad that I let myself lose control.
Mm.
Okay, back to LahRasa.
To me. Okay. So I finally managed to, not finally, but I managed to give attention to this. So I've had picked up 2 volumes. This is volume 2, which I managed to read, Hellboy. And I basically got reminded how Andrew McLean's storytelling I loved from the volume 1 I read. But unfortunately, because I read volume 1 quite a long time ago, I don't really remember the background of the witch head, the Agatha.
Oh, right. That is he still carrying her around? Because I read the first volume, but I had never read beyond that.
Yeah, and he's still carrying this witch, but this one we concentrate. It's called the Crimson Tower, and they basically heading to this Crimson Tower. It's basically starts to introduce you to a couple of characters who's going to be basically involved in the storyline. So we have these creatures who. They're really tiny. I'm not sure what they're all about. It wasn't really well explained. But basically what happened is in the first couple of pages, we have an explanation why they're heading towards it. So all of them have something to fight for, and all warriors, or they have some revenge. And the only way they're hoping the only way to be able to do that is to go to this Crimson Tower. And this Crimson Tower is known for whoever defeats somebody who's in charge of this Crimson Tower will be able to be in charge again. But apparently a lot of warriors were coming there but never coming back. So this one of the characters is Anya. She is going there because her mother and her sisters disappeared. Well, they went towards it and they disappeared. And she's thinking, by defeating this guy, I can maybe have my family back. And of course, we have our main character, Norgal, this guy who looks like, in some pages, Andrew McLean draws him like just a couple of lines for his eyes, but his beard takes over completely, like his face as well, the way he's just coloring that.
He is the headlopper.
Yeah, exactly. So it's absolutely... It's really good action and in this one. And of course, the storytelling is great. So this is the guy who's at the moment in charge of this Crimson Tower. He looks really kind of like, has a crown on his head and everything, but he looks like he's like in 2 pieces as well, which was explained. So we're giving a little bit of a background of this girl's mother, and the background of each character who's coming in there. And what afterwards happens is basically in order to enter the Crimson Tower, you have to wait for the specific time and day. I need to find that actually. Where is this entrance? Oh yeah. So everybody's coming here. We have this great gates and everything opens, and everyone's like, okay, we're running for it. We go, and then if we don't, because afterwards the gates shuts behind them. So if you go in there, it's basically one-way road. If you win, or you die, most likely. And it's called Crimson Tower because many who came never came back. The blood is pouring over because this is the way you'll know your basically destiny. And then one of those little creatures, his brothers, basically one of the oldest brother had a chance to go in there to prove the clan's worth, but his 2 little brothers managed to basically sneak inside it. So there's another background story of this. But this is really good story. Like, as I say, it's just you have a barbarian who has this, like fighting scenes, and you have this like task they have to do in order to go through the stages into defeating the main guy. And it's very sad as well because lots of deaths happen because, of course, we are in Crimson Tower. But it's very well told. It's very easy to read, of course, and it's very likable, all the characters. And it's actually in some parts very sad, of course, because we will lose quite a few main characters. But all those little creatures in here, they are like having really good story because they are there to help your basically the storyline not to be so sad kind of thing, what I mean, non one-dimensional. So you give you these little creatures who's basically helping to have a little bit fun in a way, even though lots of things what happens in here is more like blood and fights scenes and all of that. And there's like folklore stuff and storytelling about this one of the characters we had to defeat. He used to be the warrior who never were able to defeat him because of his style of fighting wars. But actually, before she had to come in fights with him, our Norgal character has like a little story to tell her, and it's like a coincidence that she had to fight him in here, in a way. So it's really well told, and that Agatha the witch has been, of course, a thorn in his backside still, because she was basically blew his ship before they entered the Crimson Tower. She's basically a little bit of nonsense and stuff like that. So, so yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's just one of the things why I enjoyed the first volume in generally, and this didn't disappoint me at all. It just reminded me why I liked the Headlock in generally.
Yeah.
It's just this barbarian guy who is basically fighting scenes, and it's this art style and the coloring scenes and the action scenes, as you can see. It's really well done, and I really enjoy it. As I say, this, and it also you have very like the way it ended. I'm not going to show it, not spoil it, but it has epilogue just to satisfy your need if you don't feel you're happy with the ending of the storyline. And also, of course, on this volume you have, which I like, this double spread page, which is really nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like this. It's very striking. But also you have a sketchbook. And it's really interesting how he actually shows you the main character, the main guy. So the first idea was here. Then he got his tightened pencils. He tightened up his pencils and then he inked it. So it's actually really nice to see all the stages of how you create the creation come. And of course you have the cover gallery with lots of interesting, of course, him on one page, and then I guess artists who did the covers for the single issues when it was coming out in the comic book shops. So yeah, I have another volume to go, but I also like when you don't read something for a while, you have an idea, you know where you liked, but you're never sure with the second volume. But this one is definitely was a good reminder why he was so famous in the way when single issues people were raving about. It's really good. It's just very nice and easy read as a comic as well. But it has a lot of characters in here, which is like, as I say, very recognizable kind of in a way, but easy to follow them and be like kind of like hoping they will survive this Crimson Tower kind of thing, yeah, and stuff like that. So yeah, really like it. Andrew McLean done fantastic, as I say. It's a sad kind of thing that I don't remember exactly the story, but she wasn't really part of this. Agatha was just a nuisance, like kind of like it was there for like a story bringing forward kind of thing. But
I can't remember if the first volume gave us the backstory on her or not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm not sure, but in generally, I think it's great to just pick it up. To be honest, I was hesitating because I was like, oh, I remember the backstory. But honestly, you didn't really need to, because you got your backgrounds for the characters, who's gonna be in the story in here, and you get like a little bit of Norgal, who, like he's just the warrior who is headlock, chops the head off from his, oppositions or anything. So yeah, really good to actually even go. If you haven't read volume 1, just to pick this up, actually you would probably definitely enjoy it.
I assume all the volumes will stand alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen individual issues out just recently, so he must be starting another volume.
Yeah, I think so. He's going to do like
be hardbacks. That's what I'm now.
Yeah, it's the one I haven't finished reading. Well, I haven't started reading. It's the volume 3. So, and Agatha is kind of prominent and even in the cover. So I'm thinking
maybe we'll learn more about her there.
Yeah, there you go. In search of the answers of their own sordid past, Norgal and severed head of Agatha Blue Witch have come to the city of Honoria. So I guess he's going back to the town where he's from. So this is the store volume to tell me. So I'll definitely keep, if I finish reading it, I'll let you know about what's happening there. But he's a fascinating character. He's just like chops, like he's really like brute, like a big guy, but he has like he's teaching the people as well. And then in that other story, Crimson Tower, he taught a couple of things, he wants to be the clever guy. I've been living through that. Don't go headlong and just fight. You have to think before you approach the fight and stuff like that. It's really good, very good storytelling, and I really like the art. It's more and more like the more you go flip the pages, you're just like, oh yeah, it's fascinating how he approaches the characters. And it's a little bit funny because he uses those scratch lines just for eyes. It's just like, it makes me giggle a little bit. It's like, oh look, it's just because in the background you don't see the detail anyway. Your eye will not see the detail, so it doesn't take too much effort to do that as well. So, which is nice. Yeah.
It makes me think of, I think it was in Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, thank you. Where he talked about how we can take a very simple representation of a human face and we can relate to it really easily and project into it a lot. And when you were showing the pages, I was thinking, I really like the way he uses open spaces in a lot of interesting ways. Kind of, in that sense, like Darwin Cook also.
His background is like his pages. You never really see the blank page behind the characters. Usually, there's a background going on. There's a couple of pages I think he has where it's a bit less, but I think it's like unnecessary. Like he's cleverly picking his own scenes where how he's gonna tell the storylines, but it's kind of always busy. You know, like he's also concentrating on that as well. So, yeah, I really like it. Absolutely, like as I say, absolutely fantastic read so far.
Yeah, I think that's one reason why I don't like the artists who like trace very carefully from a model. And it becomes a very specific face, and it doesn't leave room for my imagination or something. Not that there's some realistic artists that I definitely like a lot, but
I think sometimes when you overly look at the face expression, especially because you look on one moment of the person, and then you draw it. Sometimes when you don't look at it and you just actually do it yourself, so you give more character to the actual face. And when you just follow through the lines, you lose that. It becomes a little bit more static. It happened to me a couple of times. It's like, you know, like when you you just can trace it, easy. Trace it's easy, but it doesn't look great if you don't do it right as well. So there's two sides of a coin in that sense. So
Scott Connor's making his rock and roll joke. The Marshall amps he's talking about. You didn't get to do Inktober this year, I assume?
No,
because you did some great Inktobers where you posted stuff on Twitter other years, but.
Oh, I'll give you a second. I think it's a sample.
All right,
Have you heard of Headlopper before, Matt?
I have not heard of Headlopper, and I was going to ask, I'm not on Twitter, so what is Inktober?
A lot of artists in Inktober do a ink sketch or drawing every day and post it somewhere online.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm mostly on Twitter, so I've seen artists, including LahRasa, do it. One year I tried, but I think after 5 days I gave up.
So you basically commit the whole Inktober to do that. Is the reason behind Inktober is for an artist who actually created it is to improve your inking lines. So use any kind of tool you do the work. So of course, mainly was the traditional art styles. So you use whatever pen, the inking, or like a fountain pen. Some people inks and fountain pens as well. So whatever you want to basically improve on, you use that every single day to do that something. Yeah. A lot of people have changed the way it looks. Like people do digital now and all that stuff. But the last one I tried to do in 2019. So I created this little flip book of the creation. So what I did was animals and plants mixed together. So I was putting the plants in together. So this is my the last one I actually even tried to.
Well, when your son is off at school full time, then you'll have time to do it again. And so it's basically was one of the things I really enjoy doing. Celia was a big fan of it.
Yes, she actually.
I should put you full screen. I'm sorry while you show us some.
No, it's fine. I think which one should go out anyway? But lots of them it's quite cute. I tried.
You had a great sense of humor with yours, the way you created them. Yeah, I just
picked something cutesy, and it's really actually quite hard, to be honest, to find the.
To come up with something every day.
Oh, I like the shadowing on that one.
Yeah, so you get you prepare some people prepare a month before, so we have all of the things in ink, in pencils. But it was yeah, I think I sent that to CJ to her as original art as well. Oh yeah, I'm showing you this in the collected thingy, but did I have it original? I can't find it now. Anyway, I do something like.
Were the originals larger?
Yeah, something I do like Wolverine. This is my Wolverine, the way I came up with something like that.
You look a little like John Belushi.
Yeah, kind of. I think I got inspired by that. Yeah, I have quite. I had them in. Oh, there you go. Sorry, I'm not prepared for this. But that's original size.
Sorry, I
Oh,
put you
wow.
on the spot. That's
Yes.
very
So
nice.
they are original in.
Oh.
So that's the sizes that I came up with. It's just like I didn't want to over to commit to bigger sizes, like it takes quite a long time, and plus,
Right.
Your life and everything comes
Yeah,
into
to do it
play.
every day. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
amazing what you came up with, that
Yeah.
many days in a row.
Yeah, it was actually this was what watermelon horse. It's just like sometimes. Yeah, and then I like the bears. I'm a fan of bears, but I like the color in here. This is actual ink, so red color ink. So I really enjoyed using. Yeah, it was something different, like this one, actual creature apparently. It exists. The rabbit, kind of the horns. I forgot the real name of it. So, but yeah, it's just like you name dated and everything, and I was just posting them, and it's just. That's original. So yeah, I created this one just to have it for myself, like to basically have a headache how to make a flip book out of one piece, like in a couple of pieces of pages, and put them together. Just like something you come up with, like why would you have to bother? That can't do that stuff, but I did it anyway. So
it's very cool. Very, very
yeah,
cool.
but it's difficult when I have like my son, like you have to concentrate and do his stuff. And where's my last one?
Was one of those a jackalope? Andrew Lopez is asking.
Oh, I wonder if that was the rabbit with the horns.
I was getting into a lot of oil
She didn't
paints.
hear me because her headphones were off.
Yeah, sorry, what did you say?
Andrew Lopez was asking if one of them was a jackalope.
Yes, it's jackalope. That's the one. That's the rabbit / creature. And I was doing oils, so I just like some. I actually drew my own son. I don't have it here. It's in the living room, but I like
Is that a person holding a walkie-talkie?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's just like something, like some. It used to be coming my ideas, and I think that's why my son is so fascinated with drawing things, because while I was pregnant, I was drawing quite a few things. So I think he got a little bit of my. I put it in him a little bit, way too much. So now he's drawing everywhere. Yes, it was Ghostbusters, by the way.
You ever get to draw while he's drawing?
Yeah, I tried to. Bill Murray in Ghostbusters. Yeah, it doesn't look like. That's what I don't want to say. Well, people kind of recognize it, but I was trying to do Bill Murray Ghostbusters. Bill Murray has those specific eyes, which is really difficult to. I didn't want to trace as well, which is another thing I really don't. But it boggles my mind when you get frustrated, like when you draw something, especially a real person, and it doesn't look like it. I was like, but I'm still keeping it because it's an experience. Yeah, it seems to be. Recognizable in some ways. Anyway, I'm very harsh when it comes to art myself. I'm very judgmental, too judgy about everything else. It's like what I do anyway. But yeah, so I try to teach with my son. He draws and I sometimes do something, and he always likes to copy. But then he overdraws my stuff. So if I want something to draw myself, if I very sensitive about it, I shouldn't have my son next to it, because I never know when his brush strokes comes to my painting. So it would be not very easy for me to go crazy about it. Yeah. So
I don't know who Keith Meyerson is, but I guess yours reminded him of Keith Meyerson.
Yeah. So
I
I do
have the feeling that AFPC knows so much more about art and more obscure corners of culture than I do. Yeah.
But there's one thing before I die. This is I had the goal set for myself. So I'm fascinated with cowboys. I don't know why. Of course, Blueberry is one of my favorite characters. So I want to make a painting for myself in oils with something cowboy stuff. So before I die, I have to do this. This is one of my goals, one bucket list, I guess you call it. So hopefully I will go have a chance to do so. But I always wanted to have a scene like, like the blueberry and all that stuff, like scene of the deserty kind of like mountainous area, and there's this cowboy on a horse, something like that. Which horses are very difficult to paint, and I don't know why I'm doing that to myself.
That's hard.
Yeah, very difficult to do that. But yeah, I want to kind of that. So one of my bucket list is to do that. Hopefully I'll achieve it, and maybe I'll show it.
Hopefully you'll achieve it in time to show it on YouTube before
yeah,
the internet
hopefully
disappears.
Yeah,
I love painting stuff. I'm back to Kickstarter last October. It's supposed to be out. I've got the digital files, actually. I've already been here, but I refuse to look at the digital until I get the hardcover because the guy did all the pages with acrylic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the way he told...
Would it be someone we know of?
The name of the book, I could look at it, the name of the book was RDW, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he did his panels would be like one full page, and then it might be like a forest scene. So the branches, like the forest, the trunk would be up one side, and the branches would divide out your panels.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the opening pages of the book is basically like, he says right out, this book is meant to be taken really slowly. Kind of the idea of set this book down more than you pick it up, because there's going to be, read a page or two and then put it aside. And a lot of it's just the artwork, but the fact it was all done in acrylic just really grabbed me right off the bat. But yeah, I got the digital files and I'm like, I don't want to read it that way. So I've been kind of holding off, hoping I can hold off until I get the actual hardcover in.
There's one thing about acrylics which is fascinating me, is that the progression of paints and the way we use them and what we can do with them. You can actually, some people are now using acrylics almost in the same level of oil paints, because there's a solutions where you can actually mix it in the paint, which can actually last longer before they dries out, because acrylics dries out really quickly and you can't do nothing about it. I mean, you have to be a very opaque color to over brush it, for example, if you make a mistake. So acrylics are very unforgiving in that sense. You have to be very knowing exactly the lines you're giving, almost like an ink with acrylics. But these days, technology and the colors are really, it fascinates me in that sense as well, that you can actually delay it.
Oils are easier than acrylics, right?
Well, oils aren't easier.
You can repaint over them more easily.
Yeah, there's a stages you can go through. It's called a couple of with oils is you can go wet and wet. There's this fascinating term they call it, because you just draw it with oil paints and never stop. But also with oils, you can draw something, 10 years later you can come back to your painting and do whatever you want with it afterwards on top of it. So, of course, if you did correct stages, the oil can crackle as well if you don't use enough of medium and stuff like that. But that's why you have those paintings in museums, and some of them you see crackles. Is because of throughout the ages, oil paint still will crackle. That's why you have the people who comes in and retouches it or recovers it to a beautiful glory as it was from the beginning. So
CGC would not approve of that.
No, definitely not. Will be purple.
Marked down
purple
for
one.
retouches.
Yeah.
So Damien, it was Marco Rudy.
Oh,
is the name of the guy. I don't know if you're familiar with him. I wasn't familiar with him at all. Can you do a screen share on my thing, or do I have to?
Sure. Well, no, you have to. Is at the bottom of the panel. Do you see something that says share or screen share? You can click on that, and then you can share your whole screen. Or if you tab, there's a second tab where you can share a specific window. And then once you have it up, I can select it.
So I should be good to go now. If you can.
There you go.
Does that show it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is some of the artwork. I'll just show a couple pages. So he starts out by, like I said, telling you to go real slow with it. Yeah. And the fact he was sending out like pictures of his actual acrylic prints.
That's really good. Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it took him a year to do it. And when I saw he had like the first couple of pages done on Kickstarter when he posted this last October.
I love that red panel there with the face. That's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, I just dove into that one right away. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna. I saw the first couple of pictures and I was like, that right up my alley.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
So that looks like one well worth kickstarting.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to show too much because it's only 58 pages, so it's not very long.
You're trying to save it yourself from
Yes.
Yeah, you're spoiling yourself now.
Yeah.
I can remove that. There we
go. That's all right. So yeah, I figured I'd share a little bit of it though. But yeah, it's Marco Rudy, and I think it's going to go to store. Like one of the things I like that he did is he's mentioned, you know, after I get done shipping everything, then I'll worry about getting into the store. We're going to sell them, but I'm going to get my Kickstarter backers their copies first. And it's like,
which is correct way to do it.
Nice to be rewarded that way when you help back something like that.
Yeah.
I did see another one I backed, and the guy took a picture of the pallet like outside his house, and it was like a 6-foot high pallet with thousands and thousands of boxes, and he lived on like the second or third floor of this apartment and had to carry these all up the steps. He was just talking about the time it was going to take him to try to undo this. Marco Rubio, yeah, I think that's what it is.
So it sounds like the name is that the
guy who did the guy
governor of.
Oh,
there's some politician.
Yeah, Florida, senator in Florida.
Is that the Florida guy or?
Oh look, a crack is here. The crack.
Hey.
How's it going, everybody?
What are you doing here?
Speaking
Where's your birthday
of
party?
liquid and fluid and layered.
It's done. It is
I'm
done.
just making references to these comments.
Are you on a sugar
was
rush
it,
from cake?
Lillian's party or no? Was it in-laws party?
Yeah,
It was
Lillian.
Lillian's.
Oh,
Lillian's, yeah.
Okay.
But it was the families were over today, and it was kind of the family party. So, but it's done. Everybody's gone. So here I am. I made it.
That's awesome.
Even if there's only 5 minutes left, I need my fix.
Well, we were going around again, so we can get you once.
Yes.
We'll do you after Matthew then, since that's sort of the clockwise order here. You do have something more, I assume, Matt?
Yeah, I got. I'll share one more. And then I was just going to ask if anybody's heard of A Plus Comics. So I got out of the 50-cent bin again. Herbie.
Wow.
Yes. I think
That's an
it used to be old one. Yeah.
Golden Age character or something.
Yes.
Yeah, this one anyways is from the 90s, but I'm like, you know what? This looked too good to pass up for 50 cents. And so it was just a bunch of, I haven't read through it yet, so I just thought I'd show it off, but there's a bunch of different styles in there.
Yeah.
So I think there's like maybe 5 or 6 different stories throughout. Again, I haven't read it yet, but yeah, the Fat Man is in here. Fat Man, the human flying saucer.
I think these are reprints of obscure comics because I think I've seen a color Fat Man for sale somewhere by a comic book company that maybe only lasted a few months back in the 60s.
Yeah, it shows it as, and this is one of the pages I looked at the comic shop, and I'm like, wow, it looks like the Kim Jong-il. Looks like one of the North Korea. Speaking of North Korea, it looks like him kind of floating there.
Yeah.
But it just looked wacky and zany enough, and him sitting in the Star Trek outfit that for 50 cents, I was like, I'm gonna grab it. So, and the one I'll talk about just a little bit. The other one I got for 50 cents, and I will be double dipping on this because I've got the omnibus coming that's going to include this. Is I found Grell's Shadow, Song of the Dragon. So this is one of those square bound books. It was a 4-issue run that he did, and it's coming out with a second Longbow Hunters omnibus, I think in December of this year. But it was I'm okay with having it in this format as well if I could find him again.
Did he do the art or just the
no
writing?
It's Michael Davis Lawrence did the art.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that he kind of fell off of the art, but I guess it took him a long time, and he can do more this way.
Yeah, I'm excited. They're redoing. I think we've talked a little about this, the Sable reprints. So I'm excited that he's really involved with that as far as retouching up the coloring and stuff like that. They're doing, I think, 5 volumes of that over the next 5 years in absolute format. I've got the first one backed. It was supposed to be out, but it's been like delayed at least a year because of their color touch-ups that they've been working on. But this basically takes place where there's a gentleman an American during World War II, actually I think it was during Vietnam, who kills somebody in Vietnam and gets their sword. And we get the backstory of this chase. It's him basically trying to figure out, like, wanting to get the sword back to who it belongs to and getting rid of it, like the weight of the murders that he did in Vietnam and the atrocities that he saw. And he just wants to get rid of the sword. So he goes to a specialist and she starts to look at like the hilt and stuff like that of it, and starts to, of course, the first specialist he goes to has like a whole library of books, and is able to look it up. And then she travels with him to a different country, different city. And the one part I didn't care for as much as then, so we got these text box here.
Yeah.
And this is all about, like, I learned way more about Japan than I need to know as far as how their government was run. Like, they talk about like the imperial court, and how that turned into these different people. And it gets into the Yakuza, but it's like a 300-year run over like the Yakuza and politics in Japan. And it just got to the point where I was like, I don't know what's going on anymore. I can't follow the history, because then it kept kind of going a little bit. The story itself was really good. It's just all the history leading up to what happened and how the Yakuza came to power there's way too much in there for just one issue. Because really what he's trying to do, like I said, is just get the sword back to the person it belongs to. Here's some of the horror stuff that he is reliving as he's trying to get the information on who the sword goes to. And then, here's our movie alert. So he comes to, there's two brothers who the family belongs to. One of them, this guy, is obviously the one with all the power and money. And he's the one that if he gets the sword will end up using it for nefarious means. And there's another brother who, I think he was at this temple. I really like some of the artwork in here. The colors, I don't know if it was actual watercolor or not. I'm not, I loved it, Terrence, on one of your, maybe it was last week, your comic wrap up. You said like, who am I to know? Or you're like something along those. I think of that often. I'm like, yeah, it looks like it's watercolor there, but I don't know. I can't tell. I don't have that art, that eye. And so, yeah, we get he ends up taking the sword back to the younger brother. And at the end, again, this is a 4-issue arc. Let's see if we can get the sword back. The nefarious brother is going to end up coming through and wanting the sword back. So I've never read this, The Song of the Dragon. Never read it, but I thought, you know what, for 50 cents, some of the ending of it, for 50 cents, it was worth a roll. If I could find the other 3 issues and I could get the whole thing for $2, I'd be happy with that, even if I do own it in the omnibus as well. Yeah, I own the first omnibus, and I own also the trade for the Longbow Hunters, the 6-issue run that Damien, you just did the podcast for recently.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I love it. I mean, I don't have a problem with pulling out the omnibus at all, but it is really nice to grab just when I want to read Longbow Hunters, to pull that off the shelf and just read it in trade format. It's such a good story. I love the artwork. It's way more brutal than I ever thought that I thought it was going to be. I remember first reading it and being like, wow, they really, when Diana's like bound up in that warehouse in that one scene, that just sticks with me. So, but yeah, for 50 cents, it was $1.59 for that reprint of EC, the Grimes, the Shadow, and then the Herbie. I'm like $1.59 or I'm like sold.
Wow. Yeah.
Was this?
You can't lose with those 50-cent books, really.
Yeah, no, totally. So is this from, do you have a couple of shops close to you? I don't know if you talked about this earlier, but. Yeah,
a little bit. We, so after talking with you guys last week, I got the bug to read a bunch more and go dig through some boxes. And so about a half hour, 40 minutes away, I didn't spend a lot of time at the retreat center. I was like, I'm going to get away for the whole day. So I left in the morning and there's one comic shop there. And I kind of jokingly said, yeah, they didn't even have any dollar boxes. That's how small it was. They had 2 long boxes that were 50-cent boxes. So that was even better yet. And then that night I went to the movie theaters and took in Dune and just got away from the whole retreat center for a day.
That's amazing. What did you, my wife and I went on a date night on Friday and we saw Dune. What did you think about it? I don't want to rehash everything you guys have maybe talked about, but
my one thing, I was just trying to push everybody that's watching, including Damien and LahRasa, into going and seeing the theaters, because I thought the soundtrack, you can't do it justice without that soundtrack. It was incredible. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I loved it though. I was enraptured throughout the whole movie, but that soundtrack and the special effects were just incredible.
We saw it 3D, and I don't know if it was partially due to not seeing many movies over the past couple of years, but I was so zoned into it. Like there was parts where it was very almost meditative, like the mix of the imagery and the soundtrack. And I mean, there always is kind of for me anyway, and maybe for a lot of people, but this kind of, it seemed like there was a heavy kind of religious tone to this version of it. Not that it was non-existent before, but I really felt matched with the soundtrack. There was a couple of moments where I was transfixed by the images and everything that was going on. And there was some there were some shots where it was very kind of painterly with kind of the darkness and everything and the textures of the kind of landscape and also the houses and the buildings they were in, rather, or the castles or whatever. Amazing stuff. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, because I was kind of skeptical that it was going to be as good as it was, but I was ready to sit through a part 2 if it was there. I was totally in the mood. I would have sat for another 2.5 hours. The soundtrack was really, really cool, though. Klaus Schultz did a piece with Hans Zimmer as well in it. I can't remember the name of I don't know if it was the title music or Klaus Schultz, kind of like a the krautrock extraordinaire, you know what I mean, from kind of like these krautrockish kind of bands in the 70s and stuff. So but I was really impressed, because I didn't think, again, Hans Zimmer, I kind of have an idea of what the music is going to be like. Nothing like I expected, so it was very cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm thinking of backing down on my idea of not seeing it in the movie theater.
Another person to preach as well, to say go.
I might just pick a matinee and go by myself or something.
We went to an earlier show on Friday, and I think there was maybe, I don't know, 8 other people in the theater, so it was perfect as well. So you didn't feel like you were really crowded in there with people, because I thought it would be really, really busy, and I wasn't crazy about that idea. But when we went in, you buy the tickets beforehand, obviously, especially for 3D. So I picked a couple of seats and went in, and it was pretty empty. So that was nice too. So
cool.
That's why I'm hesitating as well, because I'm not sure if I want to be in one confined space with other people.
Yeah, no, totally.
Didn't you and Spiro.geek do like a book club about Dune at one point?
We talked Dune before, yeah.
And did you guys finish the book? I remember you weren't too thrilled by it.
I didn't finish it. I found, like, I'm about a third of the way through. I've pulled it out again to try my hand at it again, but I made it about a third of the way through. I just found that first chunk really challenging to read. I know that there's a whole series of them and stuff. I just found it challenging. It was almost like that. It's just, there was so much introduction to character and so much introduction to everything that I found it really dense, and I was having a real hard time keeping track of who's who, even though I've seen like the Lynch version, I've seen the 3-part miniseries, I've seen all those things, so I have some familiarity. I just found it really challenging, and I remember it got to like this dinner scene and it started opening up a little bit more, but by that time I was my head was swimming with stuff trying to keep up, that I ended up putting it down and just not picking it up again. So I am going to give it another shot and kind of continue on from where I left off, maybe go back a chapter or so and see if I can pick it up again.
It is. I mean, now I'm reading it out loud to my daughter, and it's written in a slightly odd style. It's hard to put my finger on what's odd about it. I never noticed that in all the times I read it to myself.
Right.
And Damien, do you consider it a space opera? That's one of the genres I see it pigeonholed into sometimes.
So what I think of it as, you had like Asimov's Foundation and Empire and all of that. And earlier than that, even cruder things like the E.E. Doc Smith novels. I don't know if you're familiar with those, The Skylark of Space and The Lensman. People often say that the Green Lantern Corps came from The Lensman. But so throughout the history of pulp science fiction, there were all these Galactic Empire, Galactic Federation kind of stories, but Frank Herbert took all that in, took everything from the history of science fiction at that point, crammed it all into one novel, and reformed it into some new bizarre Baroque kind of storyline that had never been done at that level at that time. In terms of the world building. So he's like to my mind, he's a pivot. You pivot from the old version of space opera, let's say, to simplify the term, old version of space opera to a sort of modern, sophisticated version where, everyone's going to sneer at you as a writer if you haven't really thought out the whole history of your space empire. And so that's what makes it, for me, such a great science fiction novel. It's like it not only summarizes just about every science fiction idea that came before it, but it launches you into the future of science fiction. So it's kind of a history kind of thing. So I at one point in my life, I was as much into the history of science fiction as I was comics. And there's all these books written about the history of science fiction.
Talking about the science fiction, the Foundation on Apple TV, I was watching a couple of episodes with my husband, and we completely in like 1 hour an episode, but it flies by. It's really good. We were both looking at each other, surprised how much the time goes so quickly because there's information going on, there's lots of actions happening, and you get, because honestly, I'm not sure when the original Foundation came out. I said this, apparently you said, I think, Damon, that it is
Early 40s, early 1940s.
Yeah. So there you go. So I'm definitely not familiar with original content. So, but this one, it's the actors, the main actress who is in there as well, which is not familiar to anybody. I don't think she is familiar to anybody else. But what we really like, because I'm married to South African, and she has roots in South Africa, and she has that accent you don't hear on the main stage of the TV shows. And we were like, is this? And we like both like with the ear like, is it? It's like, yeah, she has that roots. And we were like, really good. It's fascinating to watch. Really nice scenes. Looks mesmerizing and interesting the way they were already having those ideas of emperors and all that stuff and cloning and all that. Oh, that's just fascinating. It's really good. 2 episodes in, as I say, 1 hour each, and felt really quick. And then we're like, yeah, we want to watch more, but we have to invest. Like, kind of, we realized it's 1 hour an episode, and you're like, oh, wow, we actually have to invest the time before we just went in without looking, kind of thing. But
I haven't watched it yet, but from what I've heard people comment, I think they updated Foundation quite a bit. So in a weird way, Foundation, which influenced Dune, probably the TV version of it is a bit influenced by Dune. And other more sophisticated things that came afterwards. Because Foundation has almost no characters and almost feels cardboard compared to something like Dune. Yeah.
And the thing is, they have this, one of the scenes, one of the characters was using a car, let's say, this one, I don't know how they would do, but we saw Star Wars because it's just the sound the same, because you were familiar with that, because it almost feels like that, but not gimmicky. I'm not trying to say it's gimmicky, but just the way, people were getting ideas from that and who took it from where. It's actually fascinating how many one person can write and how many people get inspiration by creating other big things from that as well. So just to mention, of course, it's like, wow, it's actually quite good. So yeah.
And sorry, what did you say that was on? Did you say Netflix?
Apple TV.
Apple TV. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So if you buy any Apple product, they offer a couple of months for free. My husband had to buy a new telephone and he decided to on Apple, so we got 3 months. I was like, we better watch it so while we can, because things are expiring. We don't want another subscription. There's so many subscriptions you can subscribe to, and it just becomes actually notoriously amount of money you spend just to watch bloody telly, which is not something we want to do as well. So whatever's free, we try to use it as much as we can, just to get that.
I'll be starting it next week, LahRasa. My the director for the retreat center that I'm at is actually going to be on retreat, and when I get back from going home this weekend, he's like going to lend me his laptop because he's got Apple TV, and he's like, you got to watch this series. So you
definitely seem like someone who would like it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Have you read the Foundation books?
I haven't. No. I thought about getting them and then reading before, and I was like, my TBR is huge right now. So
they're so dated in the way they were written. You have to totally read them in the context of, science fiction was just this tiny little niche at the time. Isaac Asimov was basically a teenager when he wrote it. It's just he might have been just out of being a teenager, but I think he started publishing as a teenager.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading back through like Larry Niven stuff from the 70s and like how that feels dated. And then I go back to the 40s. We've talked, Amy, about City by Clifford Simak.
Yes.
And that doesn't feel dated at all. That feels like just a great story. Like it could have been written in the last 5 years and you would not know the way it was, but how some of them just get really dated.
Yeah, a lot of them are really dated, but I haven't read Simak in a long time, but I can see that from my memories of him. And he was older. Like he was like a experienced newspaper journalist for years before he started writing science fiction.
Yeah, the Minneapolis Tribune and the Star, which is right down the road from us. So yeah.
Whereas a lot of those science fiction writers in the late 30s, early 40s were in their teens or 20s, and they were writing for teens. And and it was a different era where you didn't need to put women in your stories and things like that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, ComicKkrakk does like women in his stories. And that's my segue into his
Well done.
to Darren's
Well done.
turn to talk.
Well, then I guess that chooses, because I was thinking, well, which one should I talk about? And I think then that chooses let's talk about women in comics.
Speaking of, that's a real
Trots
women
and
comic.
I finally found myself a copy of the hardcover. I didn't think that it would be something I'd find. I tried to order it through one of my comic shops, and there wasn't much luck because this was put out by the New York Review. Is that what it is? NYRC? Is that what that stands for? New York Review of Comics, I think. Yes, New York Review of Comics. So we couldn't get it, but I went into one of the bookshops, and there was one copy left, so I grabbed this sucker. And then,
are these originally from National Lampoon? Am I remembering?
Most are National Lampoons, but her early stuff showed up in a couple underground comics.
So it moved from the undergrounds to National Lampoon.
Correct. She was associated with the Air Pirates crew, who did the infamous Mickey Mouse stuff that got everybody, arrested and lawsuits and whatever else. So this first issue of Merton of the Movement has 4 Trots and Bonnie strips, and I don't know if these were the very first ones, but they're very early on. And it's great seeing her style, especially now that I'm not even close to versed in kind of newspaper comics. I wouldn't say at all, but what little I know about kind of classic newspaper strips, even like Nemo and things like this, there's such a vibe of that stuff in here. And it's fantastic. And every single one of the things that was impressing me so much, first of all, the layout of the book, I think, is really, really nice. They did a great job. But every title card, the Trots and Bonnie, it's all done. Every single one is different kind of lettering style with a little bit of illustration on either side. And then there's some color strips as well too. But 95% of this book is stuff that came from National Lampoons. And she's saying, I'm just reading the back matter, and it's kind of an interview with her. And I was watching an interview on YouTube with her, and she's talking about, she left out a lot of the strips. This isn't everything that's ever been published. She really edited it, because she was like, some of it, she just looks back on it and it's not as funny as it maybe was at the time. So she kind of decided to really just sit with it and take out stuff.
Do you think there's some
it's
political
funny, like
correctness in that?
I don't know if, no, absolutely not, because there's so much rude shit in here. So I think it was stuff that she just honestly fell flat. And it's funny because I remember thinking about this stuff, and it was kind of, dirty or whatever. There's some stuff that's even more dirty than I originally remembered. Not that I knew a lot of this stuff to begin with. But I mean, it's part of it is also, it's these young girls getting in touch with their sexuality as they're growing up, right? Like there's a couple of strips about getting their first period. There's all this talk of boys and the size of their penis and all of this kind of thing. So it's really from this female perspective. And it's, it kind of rides a nice, it's informative. It's almost like it has some strips that are very that kind of edu comics. The underground comics had a bunch of educational stuff. So there's a couple of things like that where she's throwing in legit kind of information, girls as they kind of blossom and bloom. But then there's also kind of just these gags, and then there's just absurd stuff. Like they torment this one boy, giving him a vasectomy, putting him in the electric chair, that sort of thing. So
Jesus.
But it's great. It's really, really great. And her style, again, it's one of those collections where you can see her style developing. There's almost a Dr. Seuss feel to some of these characters, especially this guy here. But there's a really nice variety. And I mean, like I said, the bonus with stuff like this is seeing an artist kind of grow. It's a really, really good book. I would highly recommend it. It's worth checking out. I'm sure you can sample some strips online somewhere just to get a feel for it and see if it's something you'd be into. But I really enjoyed it. It was also a super easy read. I kind of sat with it in one go. And then in the back, you even get some things in the back, some sketches and kind of rough layouts, that sort of stuff. With, like I said, a nice interview.
So the artist is still alive.
She is, yeah. She's still around.
And does it
let
say
me
what
see.
she does now or anything like that?
It might. I haven't dug too much into the back matter yet.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of doing it. I did start watching an interview with her, and the introduction is by an artist named Emily Flake, and Emily Flake also interviews her in the, I think it's like an hour conversation, hour-long conversation on YouTube that I'm about halfway through, and it's really great. Again, just talking about some of her history with comics and how she got into it and things, and you know, especially the history of the Air Pirates crew is pretty interesting for me. That kind of touch into the underground, and she's talking about all the jam comics they used to make together where they would mimic, and one of the things that she talks about is she really mimicked, and it made sense after reading this, she really mimicked a lot of these older artists who were doing strips, newspaper strips, and that's kind of how she got her chops at drawing. So there was kind of jams that she would do with crews of people where they would mimic some famous comic strips and do them together. So somebody would do a panel, then someone would do another one. But their whole thing was like, would want to try to make this feel like this artist. And they would do that for a number of different artists. And then, of course, with Air Pirates, when they started drawing Mickey Mouse and drawing those kind of exactly how they would have been seen, that was part of that whole thing, right? Which got them into the trouble with when is it satire versus when is it, you know, copyright infringement, that sort of thing.
And Disney doesn't see the difference.
Disney does not see the difference
Any
whatsoever.
use of Disney, we are suing.
That looks like Mickey Mouse. That's Mickey Mouse. End of story. And I mean, in a way, of course, it's Mickey Mouse because that's also the point, right? Like it's supposed to be to some degree, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking now, I mean, her style really does sort of capture that early 20th century comic style. And I'm thinking now, when I used to see it as a kid, when I would pick up National Lampoon, it would confuse me to see that style, and then suddenly they take off their clothes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It made it more shocking than if it was in a modern style.
Yeah. Yeah, and she name drops an artist in that interview, and I wish I would have written it down because there was one artist specifically that even when I did a quick internet search to see some of the strips, you can definitely see some similarity, but it wasn't a name that I'd heard of before, and the strip wasn't even anything that I've heard of before, but that's more just me and my lack of knowledge about that world. So yeah, it was fun.
National Lampoon was a weird thing to get a hold of when you were like a 12-year-old boy. There was a lot of stuff in those. I always remember there was a issue of National Lampoon that got passed around my school. Right. It was called it was an article in it called, or a story called My Vagina. And it was about a boy who wakes up one morning and has a vagina instead of a penis. And all his problems with his vagina.
Still see
and the boys just passed it around from one to the other. We couldn't believe it.
That's right.
Sorry,
I still
that has
see
nothing
copies
to do with
of it around. I still see National Lampoons here and there when I go to places. I'm tempted to pick a couple up again just to see them. It wasn't a magazine that I read a lot of, but same kind of thing. Right. You know, it was one like with heavy metal. It was one of those things that was passed around the school. You know, when somebody would get their hands on something, you know, it would make its rounds.
Yeah, it was a strange magazine. I mean, just for the times.
Right.
Anyway, well, that was very cool. I didn't know that was out, and now I'll have to look for it. Let's see if the library has it first. But
yeah.
Well, I guess I have another one to do digitally again. Another artist I got obsessed by was Maria Lovett. I accidentally picked up a comic of hers called, I'm blanking on the name of it, Porcelain, which is currently coming out in America, but was from the early 2000s, I think, or 2012, maybe. So then I just kind of searched for her digitally and was able to read for free this Luna, because I actually have done the free month on Comixology for Comixology Unlimited. And Luna was free. And so this one is also written by her. and I think it takes place in the 60s or 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Starts with this. I love the progression here. Anyway, I don't know where this falls into her art in terms of, I was reading something from 2012. I'm not sure when she did this. Boom published it fairly recently, but I don't know if it came from Europe first. It's about this woman basically who gets in a car accident, wakes up, and finds herself in this 60s commune, which seems, if I got it right, it seems to be one guy and all these women.
Of course.
And the plot hasn't developed a whole lot yet. It's just a bunch of, hanging out with the people in the commune, looking up at the sky, like in this picture.
Yeah.
But it's very pleasing visually, nice colors and all of that. Kind of trippy. And then she, I'm trying to think. I can't remember if anything is really revealed. Like, I think she doesn't have much memory of her background or how she got there. And ultimately, she takes some drugs and has sex with the guy. And that's pretty much the whole issue.
It's beautiful art, really nice.
Yeah. A lot of focus on the kissing there, which is interesting. And he gives her some kind of drug. I wonder if the drug is out of his special vial, so I don't know if it's regular acid or something else, or venom. He's calling it venom. And he says, "Trust me." And so it's interesting to do this psychedelic thing. Let's see, how much does it get? I can't remember now. There we go. Fairly graphic. And then we get these images of this guy trapped and one-eyed. So I guess that might develop. Someone is looking through my eyes. So this person, after she takes the drugs, looks through her eyes. And I haven't read any further.
So he had the vial and the eye with him. So he took that from him.
Oh, did he have the eye? I missed that.
Yes.
You're noticing stuff I didn't even see.
Yeah. So when he's showing the drug, there's an eye next to the vial. So I guess he's taking from that person, and that's why they all tripping.
Oh, right. There's the eye there. I didn't even register on you at the time. That
there you go.
So somehow the drug relates to his missing eye, and this guy now sees through her. I don't know if the leader of the commune has enslaved this guy or what. So I'm very intrigued what the story will be, but I was too busy to read the rest yet. Her style is a bit, it's definitely the same artist, but it's definitely also different from Porcelain. And just her approach to layouts and everything is different, which continues to make her kind of an interesting, exciting artist to me, that she's growing and experimenting and stuff. So yeah, I should just continue. One problem is last week I got 17 new comics. And I still haven't finished reading those. And then this week I got another 16. So I have this giant log jam of comics, and I'm trying to decide. When you have too much to read, you almost stop reading, I find. Not that I've completely stopped reading. I've been showing you guys stuff, but
that happens for me.
Here's ads for other stuff. There's actually ads in the Comixology. I know she did this Faithless one with Brian Azzarello, which I think is very focused on sex. But it looks like there's another one here by her, Heartbeat.
It looks kind of different style as well.
I feel, even though the Azzarello one might be good, I feel more interested in reading the one she's written herself, because I definitely like the idea of her as the artist writer, as her full vision, since seems like a very good writer too. So
really beautiful visuals.
Yeah, I'll read more of this digitally. If I like the next few issues, I should look and see if there's a hardback. Does Boom do hardbacks very much? I'm not sure.
Yes, they do, and they are quite lovely actually as well.
Yeah, and I love loose art style, and it feels like she's going even looser in this one than in Porcelain, which was already pretty loose.
Yeah.
So, cool comic.
Yeah, Porcelain has been a fun read as well. I've finally caught up.
Oh, you've
so
been
I'm-
getting it. I forgot that.
Yeah, just the 3 issues. I've finally
Right.
caught up to the 3rd one. I'm still digging it. I'm not so sure story-wise. I'm not disliking the story, but her visuals, like the art is gorgeous throughout it. I really enjoy it.
Well, my feeling, it's not a complicated story in Porcelain, but I feel like the art and the writing mesh together perfectly. You know, she can tell as much of the story visually as she wants. So,
yeah, talking about pull list. Just one thing. I committed. From issue 20, random 22.
Cool.
I'm doing USAGI, and then actually, lucky enough for me, this 22 issue starts the first story of the ransom.
Perfect timing, yeah.
I was like, perfect timing.
Yeah,
Did I just
timing.
succeed?
There you go.
So yeah, very good. By the way, we can talk about
another
it.
good 2 issues so far story.
Oh, yeah, very good. So USAGI's. I even found this library this Dark Horse edition of USAGI, which is black and white stuff. And honestly, the first story I was reading, I breezed through it, and I was just, I mean, I'm on, like you say, you're on a kick on the artist. I am probably a kick on USAGI or Jimbo, because I was like, after reading couple, I was saying to my guy, can just put me in the pull list. I mean, I waited 22 issues not to pick it up, so I guess it's just time. And I read them and absolutely loved it. Absolutely fantastic. It's just beautiful. proper happy with that.
Hello, Mets.
I'm almost.
Do you want to go around one more time, or how is everyone doing? We've been on a long time. I can probably.
I'm fine. Oh wow, you are like deep. Deep.
400 pages in, so I'm almost done it now. And I just read a two-parter called what was it called? Runaways. So he's kind of escorting a princess to her husband, and it's 2 clans. It's an arranged marriage and everything. It was a really, really good story. So I'm still really digging it. Yeah, it's fantastic. But the black and white art is where it's at. You know, like eventually I'll check out some color stuff. I know that I will, because I'm really, really liking this stuff. But this was a particularly good story. Again, like just taking this moment for this relationship between these two, and kind of the day at the festival, and she's kind of coming from her royalty, where she hasn't really had any experience kind of out there in the small towns and stuff. So just kind of seeing her transition and see the way they get along, even though they're kind of both of them outside their station to some degree, right? And having this what kind of turns into a romantic relationship. It was a really, really good story. I'm digging it quite a bit.
Yeah, I started reading all those in the Dragon Conspiracies, and they are in the color and stuff like that. But I was like, when I saw this one in the library, because it's so much smaller, if you can see. It's
I was
tiny.
thinking about that's like Friday, right? It's
exactly.
maybe also aimed at young adults. Or something.
Yeah, so it's this Dark Horse. That's how they work. This is volume 27, but one of the most hilarious things is there's introduction by Jeff Darrow, and
oh nice.
I couldn't stop laughing the way he was talking. Right. He's like, I was the 5th or 4th person to ask to write this introduction. and he's like, okay, so I did it, but then I have to put some art of myself. So he put art as well in there, because nobody does it, but he did it. And the way he was talking, and just reading this is a gem, because it's just pure Jeff Darrow, how he's from interviews. He's basically doing almost the same shit in here in the introduction. Like, I've never read this bunny, but they asked me to do this, and he's like, oh, do you know the person you're actually writing introduction about? It's like, yeah, I know exactly who he is, but I've never read his comic book about this bunny, long-eared bunny and stuff like that. So it's fantastic, actually, just to read this. And he says, like, well, if you just picked up this volume 27, don't forget you have another 60 volumes to pick up before, if you like it. Something like that. So that's how he introduces to this comic book as well. So, but yeah,
you can always fix that, Mets, and dive in anywhere on USAGI.
Yeah,
man. I hadn't read it before either, and this was the first thing that I picked up. This was my first reading of USAGI as well. I'd never ever tried one.
Yeah. So yeah, I was like, I remember Damien, you were saying that why don't you just put in the pull list the USAGI, because it's easier to get into the storylines. I was like, Yeah, I'm just doing it. That's it. I'm done fighting myself because I know how much I'm enjoying it. So.
Wise choice.
Yeah, and the story so far in this issue 22, really, that ransom is really good.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed it as well. So
I love how it is intense, but still has
Yeah.
that sort of comic booky, fun feeling to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if you've really gotten into the black and white, if the color will seem like, I don't know, superfluous or, you know.
No, to be honest, it's actually quite different. For example, for me, when I went into this, it's no, like it's different experience. It's a bit more. I think when you have a color, the background, you notice it a bit more. I'm more in the black and white. I was more concentrating on the characters and then kind of like action scenes and stuff like that. But when it's in black and white, the like, for example, in this Dragon's Conspiracy, all this background in this just plain color, it kind of sets the mood quite nicely because it's the time of the day they are into it. When it's in the black and white, it's kind of difficult to tell that exactly when the time of the day is. It's just the little things, but it doesn't really shy away from me from the storyline, for example. But I honestly don't mind. I thought will be a bit more like not enjoying it as much, but this first storyline which I read, it was a little town called Hell. Well, just a little town called Hell, and USAGI, Hell. So USAGI Ojimbo just goes in there, like, you know, like he travels past it, and they meet somebody who's from that town escaping, and he's like, "Why are you running away?" It's like, "Well, you shouldn't go there because there's this guy who is basically in charge, and is basically ruining the whole town because he was taxing people for no reason, and he's bringing this army, and we have to feed this army, and we just can't live anymore because we don't have anything." So of course USAGI Ojimbo has to investigate. So he goes into the town, and then he finds out he gets the job actually for that bad guy. He basically gets employed and asks the biggest wage ever. It's like, wow, why would I pay you such a big money? And he's like, opens it, you know, like this, I don't know, there's memes or whatever, you know, that people like, open the sword and something happens. So he's basically did it something like that, just, like killed some couple of people. It's like, that's why you have to pay me. And I just love that. It's like, I am just that good.
Actually, that same story is in this collection as well, too. The exact same thing.
There you go.
And it reminds me of the Zatoichi movies that I'm watching, because there's similar stuff. Like he wants to go get hired, and of course he asks for a lot of money, and they don't want to. So of course he shows the swordsmanship by, like, I think it was cutting a candle, but catching the cut on the tip of his sword and kind of like pans it around to people. So it's like he kind of proves his swordsmanship, and of course then they pay him. But it's that kind of stuff is so good because you can just see that link, especially for you, Rasa. That's such a link into like the Westerns and stuff like that. All of the lone samurai going into a town to set things right. It's a really, and it kind of grows from there. That storyline gets even better as it goes.
Because there's a continuation, which I haven't read, because there's the guy who he was talking to and convinced him to doing whatever he wanted to do. Then somebody told a different story, so got pissed off with USAGI. So there's a continuation story, that's what I like about USAGI. It's never end. There's always, he can always come back to those characters, you know what I mean? Which I like. It's like using all the thing, whatever you use, and continuously doing that. So very good. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And Fast Sector by Matt, I read that as well digitally, unfortunately, so I can't show it to you. I don't have my tablet with me, but I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the way I felt really like it was like this time of it, you know, like it says Fast Sector away, this very pronounced nation which are above the people, like humanity, and they asked this Green Lantern to come in to sort the shit kind of things, and she's the only one who has emotions. But they delved into, I think she delved into a lot of things what's really happening now with people, and I really like that. I don't know, Damien, did you manage to read it? But
well, because of the backlog of new comics, I started it and then I put it aside.
It goes better. I mean, it's a very slow burn at the beginning, but it goes so much deeper than you expect it to go. I don't know if Matt, you feel.
I was really liking it because it had the 3 sets of aliens, and I could already tell she was thinking about how it all works and their backstory and their history and stuff that a lot of other comic book writers might not think about.
Starts out as a murder. By issue 12, the whole world's kind of in chaos, and it just it gets ramped up. I'm halfway through her Broken Earth trilogy, her last book of halfway through that one, and she does the same thing where she's playing with like colonialism and slavery, but using the fantasy world. And in Far Sector, she talks with protest, police violence, you know, kind of racism. There's all these underlying currents of what's going on in the world today. And she's just using this Green Lantern world that she's created to extrapolate on it, which is great, you know. But I'm glad you enjoy it. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I like the way the artist. I mean, I was reading digitally, and I don't know if it's the difference because I want to kind of ask Damien what he felt, and maybe shows the couple of pages. But she was getting better, and better. The look of her, she just looked better and better and better and better. The way the depth the artist has brought into, like, with the story itself. It seemed like she was quite muted in a way. Like, she looked really good in generally, but as a character as well, she just blossomed as well. And then because she has her own things she had to deal with as well, because I really enjoyed that. And the way it ended as well is really good. I was like, at the beginning, I was like, okay, interesting take, blah, blah, blah. But then she was going into those, you know, like the backstory of her, I really liked where she's come from, and the aliens, supposedly higher, like, you know, like they're more advanced than humanity anyway, but with that emotion stuff and how she used that to tell the storyline was really good as well. And I like the characters as well. So
that's
definitely
awesome.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Green Lantern, so of course definitely ticked quite a few things, but she's like new Green Lantern, which I really fascinated, and especially the ring. And the way she has to use it, she's like, we'll have to, like, 20% left. And she's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And she just goes for it anyway. So
that's what I was hoping for, was somebody that was a Green Lantern fan, to see what their feedback on it was. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, I really like that ring, and the way the ring looks as well. I think the artist did really well, and then how she's like looking at that ring, and she's like, and there's another person who's from that place anyway. So she's like, are you sure you're gonna use that ring? And she like looks at the ring and it's like, and she just goes for it anyway. So it's like, I have to. I came here to do the job. So I really like that. So I'm done. Well, I mean, I can talk more. I mean, I had read, because it's 2 weeks. I've been reading quite a few. Actually, I was prepping, but I was like, the Far Sector was. I was thinking I'm not going to be able to, because 12 issues is quite a bit of read anyway. But I just went, and it just went. I just loved the visuals. I liked, you know, like where it was, the aliens and the mystery about the murder. And I think, Damien, you might enjoy it as well because of those.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely plan to read it. I mean, with now even more with both of you recommending it. Yeah, it's just too much to read, and so I mean, I have the trade. I think in a way, because of my own pickiness about coloring, I might have liked the digital better.
That's what I was just going to say. Is I think Damien brought it up last week, and you read it electronic or digitally as well, LahRasa. And it seems like that fits the sci-fi, what they're doing with it, maybe more than the flat colors from the trade a little bit more.
Because there's a luminous part of some like when you read digitally, you see that, you know, like Tron, for example, the recent Tron I'm talking about, when they're using those colors when the cars were moving, you kind of use kind of similar coloring in digital. It felt like that. It just gives you the background looks a little bit different for you than it would be, let's say, on a piece of paper. I presume that's why I wanted to ask if you were able to, but I should have asked you before we were chatting, but anyway, but it was interesting to see, and actually really enjoyed the digital part, because I think it's digital art for sure, because the way the panels look, the colors looked in there, and, you know, the characters, and really fan. I actually was really good fan, so like I'm glad I picked it up and read it. So thanks for you for saying that, because I didn't look at it, just went through it. I remember there was a kick about those Green Lanterns before, but I was like, maybe I'll do it once, but I couldn't. I just went digitally, and I just went through them like quickly. To be honest, I'm surprised how much I enjoyed it.
Yes.
So
I wonder if she'll write more, and I also wonder if this will like win a Hugo or a Nebula. That will. That's probably what DC was hoping for when they hired her.
I love that they just kind of carved out a piece for her, though, and I'm sure that was it Gerard Way who who actually went to her and like was shocked that she was going to write it, but I'm sure that was part of it, was like, hey, if we give her own little world and let her build and do what she can do, but just and let her do it. I think if they do that again, I wouldn't be shocked to see her come back and do it. She's such a great writer.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed, hey, give a writer free reign to kind of do what they want. And, you know what I mean? Like there's all these parameters all the time. It sounds cool. And even as a guy who's not a Green Lantern fan, like it sounds super neat. Sounds super interesting.
Because you have an alien race, you have the AI race, because they are that one, which is fascinating. Because what I really liked about her abilities, especially Green Lantern ring, she could go into the actual AI. So her ring basically could like her brain, some transfers to that, and she went into. But it's difficult because your brain doesn't compute like a computer does. And it's just that fascinating thing what you can use the Green Lantern ring for, not only make something out into reality, but actually use it into your own brain, which was like really interesting as well. So I really enjoyed that. So yeah, and the way the character itself, it's really rich, and the background, as I say, I really enjoyed it because she was using kind of this day problems in so many ways people have, especially people in color, and she's in color as well. So, and then what she had to go through in order to become Green Lantern, how she became Green Lantern, I really enjoyed as well. So, as I say, as a fan of Green Lantern, this definitely should be a tick for people to read, because if you enjoy that kind of like storytelling, especially. So, yeah, so I'm glad I managed to do that. So.
Well, if people want to do a little more, I would suggest maybe short, quick recommendations of other things you read, or I mean, just not as long as we normally go, since we've already been going almost 3 hours now.
Terrence is all hopped up on sugar from cake, so I'm sure he's ready to keep going.
Yeah.
No, I've actually gone about a week and a half now. No sugar. I'm cutting out bread and I'm cutting out sugar. So day at a time. So no sugar for me today. There was so much delicious cake and ice cream.
Yeah.
I was salivating, but I actually didn't have any.
Tortures.
I cut out sugar and white flour about 8 months ago, and the first 2 or 3 months were hard. Now when I eat any of that stuff, it tastes disgusting, and I can't.
Wow.
If anything honestly, has more than like 6 grams of sugar in it, I can't eat it anymore.
And honestly, just after like a week and a half, you know, just on a quick sideline, like I wake up in the bloating that I experienced, I'm so less bloated. I've already, in that small amount of time, I've already noticed that I'm dropping weight just from dropping those two things. And I'm not eating anything past 7 p.m. That's kind of my cutoff. So I'm trying these small steps, because I mean, this pain that I've experienced, it's partially due to weight. It's partially due to just damage that I've done to my back, but I've noticed the kind of benefits already, and that's all that I'm doing. So I haven't even incorporated like more intense physical like exercise and things. So I'm just watching my diet, and I'm noticing it right away, you know? So, but yeah, there's some mornings it is tough. Like this morning was tough. I'm making an omelet and my son is having toast, and I just want a piece of toast under that omelet, right? So difficult because it's so delicious. But it's worth it. Ultimately, it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
there's our diet tips for this week, everybody.
Since Ross was talking a lot about Far Sector, do you have anything else you want to show us, Matthew?
Yeah, I'll just go real quick then. So I even had a page written down for this one. So going back to the Nassetti run, I just thought it'd be interesting to show. You know, last time I showed about how Daredevil just got the crap kicked out of him for this long, like giant-sized issue. Well, he ends up in the hospital here, and Karen comes to see him and basically says, you know, Matt, how you hated being blind, being handicapped, you overcompensated, and don't die, please live. She's going to be there. And she's in the hospital, and then Typhoid Mary shows up. And it's bad. She says, Typhoid Mary says, I know who Daredevil is, because she calls him Matt, and he was brought in as Daredevil. And Karen can't believe it. And she says, oh, I know who Daredevil is. A man can't keep a secret from the woman he loves. And Karen says, loves, but I'm... And Typhoid Mary says, I know who you are. He has no secrets from me. I found him. I rescued him. And then Karen says, how did you know where he was? And she comes back and says, you know, when you love someone, you just know these things, darling. And Karen ends up running into Matt. And Karen. Matt's first words, where he's kind of unconscious, are Mary. And then Mary's like, I'm here, Matt. I'm right here. And Karen just bolts out and she's gone. And then it's Matt. There's a lot of just Matt murder. They go through this Inferno one that I was telling you about. But it's a lot of him like dealing with the fact that he basically has lost Karen. And she's nowhere to be found. The law center is burnt. And then there's this whole episode or this whole issue where he's in New York, and there's a lot with New York City at the end of this Infernal thing. And some guy buys him a beer. So there's Daredevil sitting in the bar, and he's not kind of himself because of this Infernal thing. And then the whole next issue is a Christmas issue. And it's basically him in the bar, sitting in the bar, slamming drinks, which is great because it's like the whole issue does take place in the bar, except for the very end. There's a couple of brothers in there. Some lady sits down next to Matt. They start having a conversation.
It seems pretty daring, the things Nocenti does with whole issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the times, especially at that time.
Yeah, I know there's Daredevil kind of drunk and making out with another person or making out with that woman. And I don't want to go into more of it because I don't want to spoil anything else.
Daredevil, the himbo.
There's just, and then there's some great scenes at the end with him at the end of the bar falling. And like I said, I'm jumping a little ahead because I don't want to ruin what happened there. But then some people find him in the alleyway, basically. Yeah, so the stuff with Kingpin using Typhoid Mary to get between and break Daredevil's heart, and then that scene in the hospital was, you don't think of those things as being powerful, but when I was reading it, it was like you could just feel this like split with Karen. It's like, oh my God, just the way he does it, his first words being Mary, and then her being there and running up to him. And now Daredevil's just down on his luck, beaten up. And yeah, so it's been, I think I've got 2 issues left in this, and I'm just loving her run. I'm kind of shocked I haven't read it before, but yeah, it's definitely worth picking up.
AFPC had talked about an interview that she did with Chip Zdarsky. I watched it last week. It's well worth watching. She talks a lot about that run and just like what she was thinking when she was writing it and the freedom she was given. And I think she talks about that bar room issue a little bit because she's literally like just stuff that she was seeing on a daily basis. She was kind of putting it into the book, right? Like a look at the city as it was, you know what I mean? So it's a damn good interview. Well worth checking out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, you've got me really psyched to look up the Nocenti run, which I skipped in the past. Terrence, something else up your sleeve?
I got a quick one for you. So I took it back to the library already. That Upgrade Soul. I finished reading that. And when I dug into it, I think I sent Matt an email about this as well too. When I looked into it, I didn't realize that it started as an app where you could try the first issue for the first chapter, I guess. And it sort of has this 3D, basic 3D stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And a soundtrack, which maybe you can hear. But
I'll
just show you a couple of pieces there when it comes up. The book is great. And this app that they did, it's really easy to use. The visuals are incredible. And the soundtrack for each of the kind of little chapters within the chapter is beautiful. There you can see some of that 3D.
I like the way the panels slide in and out too. That's cool.
Yeah. So they developed this and then they did the comic apparently. So I mean, it really feels like another way to tackle kind of indie creators kind of putting stuff out there. So the potato looking things are the clones. It's a sci-fi story where it's this old couple wants to get themselves cloned. And then
so the app is just called Upgrade Soul?
Upgrade Soul, yeah. And then for $11 you can buy the whole thing and it gives you the whole chapters. But the soundtrack, I'm amazed how good the soundtrack is. That little beeping that's going on, he turns it into these synth kind of stabs throughout the soundtrack. It really blends really well. And honestly, like instead of attaching yourself to a CLZ or whatever, this seems like such a cool way to tackle the world of comics on a phone. It's really nice to read that way as well too. And honestly, the book was really good, even if I was a little bit confused by the end. I didn't quite understand what I was reading right at the end. I feel like I missed a little something.
Mhm.
Overall, though, a really, really cool kind of sci-fi story. It won like the Dwayne McDuffie Award. Is that what it was? I think is what the award was. Well worth your time, though. And honestly, just to even just try it out, the app was free to download. So that's it. And the effects, I think it works really, really well. I was really impressed. I didn't know what to expect when I was going to download this. I thought it would just be kind of panels, but the addition of the soundtrack
as you were talking.
There you go. Yeah. So, I mean, it feels like the next step in something like this could be having some voice actors where you could turn on or turn off kind of a voice actor element and have kind of, you know, a radio play to some degree, but you could choose to have that on or off. I think would be a cool extra feature for something like this.
I used to, on the iPad, get Dr. Seuss books, the app version of Dr. Seuss books, and you could tap on a character and they would speak. You can do that with a comic book, right? If you want to hear what the character sounds like, you could tap on it, or you could.
That's pretty neat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So I mean,
I'm
that's my
excited.
short
Thanks for
review of
telling
that
me
one.
about that. Someone actually sent me a copy of the graphic novel. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my shelves. I didn't know.
I guess I did the same
It's well
thing.
worth it.
I sent it to you.
Oh, okay. It was you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So have you read it?
I haven't. I had gotten that copy that I sent you because they're going to release a deluxe edition.
Were you re-gifting?
No, I bought the one and I planned to read it, and it was one of those that just sat on my shelf, and then I was gonna give it to a friend once I found out that they were gonna do the deluxe edition.
Mhm.
And so then for that prize for Highland G's channels, what I sent it to you for, I thought, you know, that would be a great one to send over because I've heard nothing but great things about it.
Yeah. There is a hardcover that just came out as well too. I think signed and everything. So I mean, you know, especially for you, Damien, it might be worth checking out because they did name a few comic shops where they had copies. I think Drawn and Quarterly in Montreal had some. The shop in Toronto, I don't remember if it was Floating World that did, or I don't remember what, but I thought there was one kind of shop named by you. But yeah, and honestly, the panels, like that kind of landscapey, widescreen panels throughout the book as well, I found that really worked. It was a really nice pace throughout the reading and getting that kind of widescreen generally 4 panels a page, generally, not all the time, but not like Watchmen kind of strict, but for the most part, right? Really good book, yeah.
Well, I think now I'm going to do the app version side by side with the book that Matthew sent me.
There you go.
Because I like I mean, I'm not all about the digital comics, but I love apps and have been trying to design my own. So, that's cool to see.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'm already looking and I'm mesmerized by that movement already. So I was definitely gonna have a look.
Okay, well, my last quickie, I'm going to do a screen share again. Like I mentioned, I am doing the free month of Comixology Unlimited, and I kind of timed it for when some of these Scott Snyder's doing a whole series of books for Comixology, and one was with Francisco Francavilla, which was my big motivation to do it now.
Yes, that was very easy to do.
And so the excuse me. And I think they already have a contract to do these physically, either with Dark Horse or Image. Excuse me. But the story concept here is really cool. That there's this movie that no one's ever seen called Night of the Ghoul, and this film buff or historian tracks down the director, who now lives at some strange my voice would be going now, lives at some strange nursing home, and I think he kind of bribes them or tricks them into going to visit the guy. There he is. And he's talking with the director, and basically he's only seen little excerpts of the film, but we get the picture. It's about this ghoul. It's some kind of vast supernatural creature upon whom all kinds of supernatural stories were based, like vampires, like zombies, all kinds of other things, and kind of the source of evil in the world. And of course, I don't think it's too horrible of a spoiler to tell you that it turns out the ghoul is real, or the hints are the ghoul is real. So I love this. I love things that are like a story within a story. So I like the movie within the story kind of concept. It's hard to tell yet if it's going to be done super well or not. I don't always, Scott Snyder's writing doesn't always work for me. So these are scenes from the black and white movie. So we switch back and forth between the clips of the movie and talking with the director. Mm-hmm. And then we get our big revelation at the end of the issue. And mm-hmm. I also don't know how frequently, excuse me, these are coming out. So I guess I may have to pay Comixology Unlimited to read any more or wait for the physical copy. But I think this will ultimately, because I love Francavilla's art, ultimately be something I want to own in a hardback if possible. But I love this playing around. I love the whole idea of movies that once existed that now no one can find. I know there's a few movies out there like that. And some of them have been found over time. Like wasn't Freaks, that movie Freaks, at one point no one could ever see it, and now I think it's available, or at least a shortened version of it or something. Anyway, that was fun and interesting. I think it's also interesting that these digital platforms are signing up celebrity creators to sort of entice people, just like Netflix or whatever tries to get different well-known people to sign up with them. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of changing the landscape and maybe giving even more power to creators, or at least to the well-known writers like Scott Snyder. I think Scott Zdarsky may also have some kind of deal with Comixology now. Yeah, it is kind of like a Netflix pitch or something. Yeah, so I'm both excited by the story, but also feel like it might be done in kind of a vanilla, typical TV way or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah, are they free within Amazon Prime? Oh, I have to look into that because I already have Amazon Prime, but I've been looking at them through this 1 month Comixology Unlimited thing.
I think when you have Amazon Prime, you get like a first volume for free, and the rest of it you have to go plan to buy it via that. So have a look. I mean, it's always good to try something new, and it's free.
And whether these special things that they've signed up with Scott Snyder, if they're under the same deal, or if they're to try to get you to do Comixology specifically.
Yeah, well,
I'll have to look into it. That's a good thing to look at. Anyone else have anything else they want to show quickly?
This is great. So you should get it. Yes. You should get it. I mean, I got it because I was actually surprised that I managed to. I had to go through the shop. I don't usually buy anything from them, but my comic guy didn't have it. So I was like, okay, so I don't have a choice. He says no. So I had to go something, and the art is stellar, and the mystery is great, and the setup for the character and how he meets this dude, especially this scene, it's very prominent in the end of the storyline. But the way that's like half silent things, and the way he's going through it, and it's like one day when the guy, like you have those days or at work or you're going back home, but you just like, like things setting up in front of you and you like stumble upon it, and it's just basically what I felt this guy had. And then actually quite good that you guys showed it, because one of the recommended books that the class is about to finish, so I guess I could have another recommended book in my pull list. So this is definitely, I'm very curious about it. I really like the everything about it. I don't know, it just felt like a perfect mystery kind of part of this, and especially how he approaches his house and why he's approaching his house. It's like kind of weird and mysterious, and we don't know. But yeah, very, and the artist is definitely that Andre Lima Arojo is definitely fantastic, and I really like it, and I wonder what's going to be end of this, and I mean, not end of it. How are you going to continue after this issue? Because this one is, it's just so simple, you know, like you flip through it because you don't have to read. You just concentrating on your panels most of the part through.
Yeah.
And a couple of those mentions of the panels, you just like, okay. And they're just like really small words, which is great, which is exactly how kind of you get you interested in this one. And I was very happy. I was like smiling after reading this one. So absolutely love it.
It really shows off what a great storyteller visually this Araujo fellow is. I don't know if AFPC is suggesting that he has seen other comics by him, because I have not.
Yeah.
I have not ever heard of this fellow before.
It's very simplistic. It's the line works like very simple, so you don't have those you know, like overshadowing ink lines sometimes, because but the coloring, I think he's doing his own coloring, isn't it?
Yeah, he is.
And it seems so it seems to be like it does really good justice for his own art, to be honest, because it doesn't over the, you know, like simple shapes, and you know, you don't need it's raining kind of thing, but the guy's looking up and you're like, it's just, I don't know, it's just those scenes looks exactly, you know, how it rains and how cloudy it is, how miserable everybody feels, and you are that person who doesn't have the umbrella. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you feel like for him, and like I know that feeling, you know, like, you know, when you have that moments when you are like trying to get through and everything, and people are trying to be like kind of having like a small conversation in the bus, which is not always fun, kind of awkward most of the time.
Yeah,
so,
to me, the simple art seems to just prove how great he is, because he gets everything just right with a few lines.
And this things with a pigeon, oof. I mean, me and animals doesn't come across especially, but the scenes with pigeon, I don't know, anything, whatever is in trouble, I was like, oh, my heart went to like, oh no, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this kind of thing? But we have reward for that as well, so which is great. What happened to the pigeon? I don't know. It's really minuscule. It's not part of the story.
Pigeon turned out to be important in a way you would never expect it.
And that little snippets of recommend. I don't know if I presume he really was telling the artist how, because you have to tell what he wanted to portray in the storyline, because you know what I mean. You don't have many bubbles, speech bubbles, but it seems to be they gelled really well together. Because it seems to be that mysterious part of telling, you know, that nighttime scene, end up late because of the situations happens before that. He approaches this house, knocks on the door, that opens the door, and I'm not saying anything else because there's a spoilers, like both of you probably said, but that open scene, great. It's just spot on. And then I say, really good with the artist. So if you can, anybody can get hold of it, just to read this first issue. Yeah, really good. For sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I got Generation Gone. It's at home, but they're in my short boxes at home. I remember collecting that when it came out in singles. So I'm going home this weekend. I'm going to go see if I can dig those out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm suddenly remembering I loved the art in Avengers AI, but at the time I didn't pay attention to who the artist was. And that the art in this book surprises me that he ever did mainstream Marvel comics. I mean, you would not guess that from what you were looking at here.
But it's probably Rick Remender cleverly enough while he was working on Marvel, pitching, like taking couple of artists, or he's noticing those couple of artists you're working that time. So it's very good with that kind of stuff. So Rick Remender's picks like really good.
He has excellent art taste, doesn't he?
Yeah, like I was talking about this Deadly Class, that the guy Wes Craig, never looked at it before, but his paneling, it's absolutely fantastic. This issue particularly, for example, this is like a bit of a reward for people who's been investing in this issue, in this series for 48 issues. 49, I think, is going to be this last, because he said it's going to take a couple of months to finish it. But anyway, but I really like Wes Craig's art, and he's like a trippy like couple of pages. You don't expect everything black and white, and she's on acid, and that's what she's seeing. So, oh wait, no, it's a heroine actually. She's actually on more hardcore things. This character went through something quite crazy. Like it's a simple look the coloring as well, but she's doing it under the trees in the park. She's having heroin, which is like horrible. That's the stage of herself, who she is now. So another things why I like this comic book is because of Wes Craig and Rick Remender. Just as I say, another thing, he picked a really good artist to do that.
Yeah, and no doubt he brings the best out of artists too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's two-way, like working together. You know, at the end of the day, so he wants to get that. And wherever I read, people who's reading continuously this always says that, you know, like we continuously going with, because this creative team is just wants you, it just invites you for more to find out the whole storyline. And I know there was like the breaks and stuff like that, but every single time you open after a while and you just look those pages and you know the kick scene, just like simple kick scene, it's fantastic and it looks spot on.
Yeah.
And the guy just had those ability to do so, and that's what I like about Rick Remender's choices of artists he's picking up for his own stories. So,
any other quick hits before we go, or?
I'm done. I think I showed everything I read.
I meant from anybody else. Does Terrence,
yeah, but
do you have
pardon me,
anything
yes.
else you want to show us? I see some nodding of heads.
Sure, I got a quick hit. This was from the Winnipeg Facebook Comic Addicts group. A hefty $3 for this Warlock 5 graphic novel of the first 5 issues from Aircell.
You showed some amazing stuff on Twitter from that.
It is so much fun. It's completely ridiculous, but it is a lot of fun. You kind of, the first few issues, you get like the draw from this early stuff, these early issues when I have seen them around. They're amazing kind of airbrushed and painted covers of some of the main characters. They're really, really eye-catching. But the story itself was really entertaining, and the art, it really goes through waves of, there's some stuff that's really rough and doesn't really do much. But then there's these touches of, yeah, exactly. There's these touches of just beautiful stuff in here. And the story is just basic. You know what I mean? These kind of 5 characters who are sort of at odds with each other, and kind of they're in charge to some degree of like these space-time kind of portals. And it just kind of goes from there, where they all have to kind of start fighting together. Let me just pick. Oh yeah, this was a good one. This one character who transforms into a dragon. Like really cool stuff, you know. So just
Great
a lot
detail.
of fun. You're not getting mind-blowing stories by any stretch, but as we've spoken about many times before, sometimes comics just got to be fun. And again, for the $3 buy-in, there's another good shot of the dragon there too. Setting a guy on fire, breathing fire on him with a car in the bottom that looks Batmobile-ish. It's really, really great. So I would highly recommend it. This is something that I have seen single issues in like $1.50 bins. So keep your eyes out for the early issues of Warlock 5, and you'll know which ones are the ones to get up, because as it kind of transitioned, as it kind of got later and later, the covers really declined at a rapid pace. So those early issues, you'll be able to tell which are the good ones to pick up just by the covers. So that's my kind of short hits and recommendation there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh, let me return. So I'm all set. Matthew, you're all set, or anything else up your?
Yeah, I would rather give my time to Terrence if he's got anything else to show. So okay. Yeah.
That's all that I've kind of
as
prepared
Ragga
for.
Muffin said, this may be our longest ever. 3 hours and 22 minutes so far. So probably a good time to end, but really glad Terrence could show up.
Yes,
And
that's
not
great.
high from sugar.
I'm glad I could. I'm glad I could be here too. I've been jonesing. When I miss a week, as Rasa was saying in our Twitter chat, I just end up jonesing for the chat. So yeah.
Will the next episode be on your channel? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So next Sunday, if all goes to plan, we'll be back on ComicKkrakk's channel, cracking out some comics.
Right on.
Thank you, everybody, especially the people who
Later.
stayed the entire 3 hours and 22 minutes. There's some people who have been here the
Hardcore
whole
fans.
time. It's amazing. We do have lots of amazing commenters. I really love it. Okay. Good night, everyone.